Okay, 6 o'clock on the dot. We will get underway. Welcome to the meeting of March 24th, 2025. My name's Jeff Bateman. I am Deputy Mayor for this month and next. Welcome, Councillor Pearson. And I'm sitting here tonight because today Mayor Tate provided notice to the district that she is taking a leave of absence now that the federal election has been called. She's asked for a stop payment of her mayoral stipend from today until further notice. She's also written the CRD with the same notification and request to stop her CRD stipend. She notes that her alternative director, who is yours truly, will be attending CRD meetings in her stead until April 28th or until further notice. So on with the meeting. Should have called it to order, but I've now called it to order. We have a First Nations recognition here that we are meeting with much respect and gratitude on the traditional territories of the Coast Salish, in particular the Sooke First Nation here where we are now, and the Shianu is also represented within the district of Sooke. Now, shall we move on? Yeah, well, welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us tonight. Does anyone of you wish to step forward and speak to us? Coach Bly? Yeah.
Took a while to figure that out. I'm here on behalf of the senior boys basketball team from Edward Milne. We wanted to show our gratitude for the kind donation from the municipality of Sooke that helped us be able to get to the provincial basketball championships in Langley. As I look around here and see the age of the town and some of the other guys I went to school with, athletics at Edward Milne has always been a large part of school life for the kids. Basketball has been ongoing continually for 29 seasons at Edward Milne. And this was the first time that the boys won South Island Championship, finished third in the Island AAA Boys playoffs, which gave us a berth to the big show in Langley, where 64 teams at 4 different tiers come together for 4 days of playoffs. To put it into perspective, the boys are one school of 74 trying for 16 positions, and this year won it. So it was for me, it was quite enjoyable, and the generous donation from the district helped us get to where we needed to be. It was an unbelievable community expression. 2 days after qualifying for the BCs, my door knocked continuously from past players and community sport-minded people in the community like Henry Hagelin and his family, who generously also donated for these boys to get here. Mayor Tate asked for a picture, which we brought for her, but we also brought a thank you card and these Wolverine decals that you can slam onto your car and you won't get honked at by me if you drive poorly. But we just really wanted to say thank you, and hopefully one of these guys is standing in one of these counselor positions one day. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. I'm curious, how many of you are returning for another season, or are you graduate?
Okay. Six of our 11 guys are returning, and we are not just planning to go back, but we're planning to go back and win.
Yes.
We started practicing the day after we got back from this.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Congratulations, gentlemen, and best wishes in life and next season.
Thank you very much. You're alone.
There's Malachi Hills. Okay, so we're moving on to item 3, approval of the agenda. That the agenda for the March 24th, 2025 regular meeting of council be adopted as presented. Moved by Councillor Beddoes, seconded by St. Pierre. All in favor? Yes, okay. We now have minutes to adopt, March 10th, 2025 regular council meeting and March 17th committee of the whole meeting. So moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Beddoes. All approve? Okay. Now we're moving into invited presentations, and we have an RCMP quarterly update by Sergeant Cara Gubbins, joined at the mic, perhaps not by Staff Sergeant Wilcox. Okay.
My arms aren't as long as Staff Sergeant Wilcox, so I will try and reach this the best I can. Okay, so this is our quarterly report. And here I have documented the 2024 Sooke Performance Plan priorities. This year we focused on 5 objectives. The first one was enhanced road safety, combating impaired, aggressive, and distracted driving. The ways we did this was due to our increase in number of police officers. We're able to spend more time on the road, conducting roadblocks, increase patrols, which did reflect in our statistics of locating more impaired drivers. We also did a joint project with the Integrated Road Safety Unit, again, targeting distracted driving and other traffic initiatives and priorities. Secondly, our performance plan priority was crime reduction, and that was safe streets and prolific offenders. Sooke RCMP have been involved in the REVOI program now, which is repeat violent offenders, the monitoring of them. So they're monitored when they're in custody through corrections, as well as through probation when they're released, as well as by whatever policing agency they're residing in. We do currently have 3 REVOI clients that are that reside in Sooke. So the purpose of this is if one of those clients is taken into custody, they are held and they are going to be going before a judge. So it's sort of targeting the issue of years ago with the backlog with COVID in the court system, the catch and release. When we have someone who's a violent offender, even if they're in custody for something as basic as shoplifting, we will hold them in custody and take them before a judge. So that is something that's been positive to be involved in. There's been a few media releases. We have another one coming this week, but we've been involved in a number of CDSA, so controlled drugs and substances search warrants in the Sooke area. We've in the municipal and provincial areas, and we've actually used the Vancouver Island Emergency Response Team on several of those warrants, and have located a significant number of drugs and weapons. One of the searches alone yielded about $100,000 worth of street value drugs. Thirdly, our priority is accountability and good governance, community involvement. So just to mention a few things this year, we had a Tour de Rock rider, Constable Somerville. She rode in the Tour de Rock, which was a very intense commitment. Started in about February, March, and then they rode in September. There was a number of community events, fundraisers at the Legion, at the soccer field in relation to that. And appreciated the RCMP and the Cancer Society appreciated the support of the community. We also had police officers marching in the Remembrance Day ceremony this year as well. Another recent event was the a few of our officers actually were engaging with the high school and formed some relationships and decided to plan a hockey game. So a few weeks ago, some of our officers went over with the high school, and so it was the teachers and the RCMP versus the students. I thought the students were going to win, but they did not. So yeah, so that was a really good community event. The stands were packed actually with a number of the middle school and other students were there. And say fourth on the list is contribute to employee wellness, respectful workplace. So in the RCMP, we have a number of checks and balances for things that we do ourselves. Conflict management courses, harassment courses, things like this, checks and balances we need. But at this point, the way that Staff Sergeant Wilcox and I are handling this is documenting and recognizing officers' accomplishments through documentation. So providing them with something for their record, or if they're one of our officers is actually being awarded a King's Coronation Medal. So that was not recommended by us, but through a tactical search team that he's involved in. So just doing that to kind of keep a good rapport at the detachment. Fifth is reconciliation. So relationship and trust building with Indigenous communities. Currently, I'm involved in looking at some training with the Victoria Sex Assault Center, with them coming to the detachment and just providing even some more insight and ways to handle sexual assault investigations with Indigenous persons, because we do have 3 nations that we police. And when I was in a meeting with the Chiano Nation, this was something that they had suggested and something we're working towards. So hopefully that's big enough. These are some of the statistics that we've pulled through our E-Division crime analyst. So between 2023 and 2024, I've broken down the assaults for aggravated assault, assault with a weapon causing bodily harm, and plain common assault. There was a 52% increase between 2023 and 2024 for assaults in the municipal and provincial areas of Sooke. This is an upward trend, and at this point, with the growing population, would be the reason for these types of this number of an increased rise. Secondly is domestic violence calls where there's an assault. So when we have domestic violence, it would be inter-partner violence. So people that are in a relationship. And between 2023 and 2024, there was no increase in the number of domestic violence calls involving assault, but there was in the municipality of Sooke. However, in the provincial area of Sooke between 2023 and 2024, we did see a 26% increase in the reported complaints. Here is domestic disturbance, no violence. So again, these are inter-partner violence files, but they're not family disturbances. So this would be, for example, husband, wife, or other people that are in intimate relationships. So there was, again, no increase in the total number of reports between 2023 and 2024. Between 2022 and 2024, there was a 5% increase. So not much change there. As far as break-in enters, got the statistics for municipal and provincial. There was a 31% increase in break-in enters, and I've combined the residential and business statistics together. That was for municipal and provincial areas of Sooke. And again, that would be just increased population. We have a variety of people moving here, so not people here just moving homes. People, you know, when there's more people here, there's more homes, there's more money, more people coming to commit crimes. In our mischief, we've had a significant increase actually. There's been an increase of 52% in mischiefs from 2023 to 2024. relatively the same. The municipality of Sooke, there was a 42% increase, and provincial areas a 52% increase. And again, this is probably due to the result of the growing population. Also, officers reporting these offenses accurately and not necessarily attending a file and just listing what the basic offense was, but what the actual criminal code offense could be if there were charges that were approved or not, coding it what the criminal code offense is. And sexual assault and sexual interference. So sexual interference is the sexual assault of a person under the age of 16. So I've put these statistics together. There was a 6% reduction in the number of sexual assaults and sexual interference files reported between 2023 and 2024. We've had, in relation to the weapons offenses, and again, you'll see here I've got municipal and provincial, but there's a number of offenses in this one. Firearms, so careless use of a firearm, pointing a firearm, shots fired, weapons possession contrary to an order, weapons trafficking or manufacturing, again, weapons possession, and there's been an 81% increase in weapon-related offenses in the municipality of Sooke from 2023 to 2024. And there's been an 8% increase in weapon-related offenses in the provincial areas of Sooke from 2023 to 2024. So again, growing population. We're also seeing in this day and age, the legalization of drugs, other things that can contribute to the statistics being raised here. We've also seen an increase in our impaired driving offenses in the municipality of Sooke. So between 2023 and 2024, 32% increase. And in the provincial areas, a 22% increase, which, as I mentioned before, these statistics reflect more police officers on patrol, allowing us to do more proactive enforcement, such as looking for targeting impaired drivers. And this one here is, there's a variety of offenses here. So the statistics are for criminal code occurrences with a victim under the age of 18. And I pulled statistics for, it's a little bit small to see there, so I'll read these out. Assault, like aggravated assault, common assault, assault with a weapon or causing bodily harm, distribute intimate image without consent. So that's going to be people, often what we see is people taking, whether they've shared them in a relationship or they've come to them through a nefarious purpose, but distributing people's like sexual images without their consent to others. Extortion, harassing communications, luring a child via computer, sexual assault, sexual interference, and uttering threats. So between the municipal and provincial, there's been a 122% increase in the municipality of Sooke for criminal code offenses involving victims under 18, and 123% increase in the provincial areas of Sooke from 2023 to 2024. The mental health related occurrences, here I've noted the mental health related files and then mental health apprehensions. So the apprehensions are in relation to the reported files. There's been a 32% increase in mental health related files from 2023 to 2024, and a 17% decrease in mental health apprehensions during that same time. So these files and mental health related files are when we are dealing with a person, sometimes who's in crisis. They may not always be, but there may just be a mental health component when we arrive at that file. Whether we may have been called for a disturbance, we arrive there, someone is in a mental health crisis, or we may receive a call where someone is suicidal, then a mental health component as well. Again, there's a, bit of a normal fluctuation. There's not necessarily a trend there. And so far, the targeted projects for 2025, like I mentioned earlier, with the assistance of the Vancouver Island Emergency Response Team, we've executed 4 search warrants in the District of Sooke and provincial area since the year began. 4 of them were for drug trafficking under the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act, all on prolific offenders in the community. And this just shows that there is an organized crime element in the community, and this is something we're targeting. The other warrant was for criminal code investigation for extortion and criminal harassment. And right now we have charges before the courts on 4 of these investigations. And so at this point, just looking to see council's input on what they would like to see the detachment focus in the new annual performance plan for 2025. So.
Okay, thank you for that report. So this is your annual report today, not a quarterly report.
Yes.
Yes, okay, good. Just for clarity. Thank you very much for all of that. So council, questions? Councillor McMahon.
We're just looking at the 3 years, but it seems like there's a dip in 2023 in the middle. What do you attribute that to?
For which specific statistics?
For almost, it seems like a majority of the statistics there, 2022 will be here, 2023 is here, and then 2024 is here. So I'm just wondering what that dip in those statistics are a result of.
So each obviously, each crime I could report it as is different. Sometimes there are just normal fluctuations. For some of these things, I'm obviously not like a statistic analyst, but for things like more break and enters, right? We have more homes being built here. We have more people residing here, like growing population, I would say is probably the reason for a lot of the trends. As far as 2023 having a dip, I could more probably speak to the increase. Like in 2024, we are getting more police officers into Sooke. So we have more people on patrol. So I would be seeing the numbers for impaired driving from 2023 to 2024 increasing because we have.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's not that there's more people drinking and driving necessarily. It's just that you're actually apprehending because you have the bodies on the ground. I was just curious. I'm more curious about the dip itself because it doesn't follow that trend because we're having an increase in population. So I'm just curious why, what the dip is from.
Yeah, it would depend on the specific statistics. I can't describe why the dip is for 2023. Like I said, growing population. It's also other people that are coming to the communities, right? We have trying to think how I can word this exactly. Like there is an organized crime component here. As we have more police officers, we've also been able to conduct more of these controlled drugs and substances investigations. So as we are receiving information, some of these are proactive files. So we are actually creating them. So our numbers are going to be higher 2024 and 2025 than in 2023 when we didn't have some officers with some of that drug background. So for example, some of the weapons and the drug statistics, I could say that there was an increase for that reason.
Okay. And then I was wondering, do you also keep track or look at, because you have your percentages in comparing year by year, but do you have your percentages in comparison to like the population itself? So like, is the increase due just to the population, or is it kind of, it's just in line with the growth, or is there the slope? Or is it that there is an enhanced criminal element that you were speaking to?
So I'm just pulling the statistics from all of the reports and all the files that we have in our prime system. Looking at this, that would be basically I would say, trying to think how, besides growing population, like I'm not pulling statistics from other things besides incidents that we've had reported to us and incidents like proactive files, investigations, things that we're starting. We also, like in Sooke, we do have the community's changed, right? We have other housing units that have been created. We have other supportive housing, things like that. Some of these things were having increased populations, and I can't explain why there was a dip in 2023.
Yeah, that's fine. I just mean like if we have 10,000 this year, crime is at like 15% and we have 20,000 this year. Is the rate of crime the same regardless of the population fluctuation?
I don't have the stats compared to the population.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, we have a speaking list now, Councillor Beddoes and then Pearson.
Yeah, thank you for that report. It is interesting? It's statistics, so they could be taken many, many different ways. And I too was wondering why the dip in 23 and there's 22 was almost the same and then it dips, then it comes up. But I guess that's the nature of police work. You asked a question about what would you like to see the attachment focus on in the new annual performance plan. All of the above. Everything that you brought to us today is extremely important. And I'm glad that we have the extra officers on hand that can have a look at these things. There has been a change in, be careful here, but with some of that more social housing, I know the food bank has gone up, and it also, I'm sure some of the stats for you go up because of that. I don't want any stigma to that, but that's a reality of life. The one question I have is when you call the ERT in, how is that costed out for us?
So when ERT is coming in for provincial areas, that is being billed to the provincial collator for the emergency response team, not for the district of Sooke. We also, the projects that we were doing, we're actually executing in the daytime when ERT was like, I'm not going to obviously give information of all their shifts, but we're aware of, we're able to plan projects with them in coordination when we can have a specific numbers of officers that we need, which isn't going to be impacting the Sooke budget. So it's different if we have a if we have a high risk file.
Emergency,
as
and
they're
opposed to a planned,
Yes.
Okay, understood.
Yeah.
Okay, but I guess the bottom line is that we can be on the hook for that if there's an ERT team called out. And that ERT is not just an RCMP, that's involves Victoria Police as well.
No, ours is the Vancouver Island Emergency Response Team. It's only RCMP officers.
All
Yeah.
right.
And they're going to be going full time here as of April 1st. And so some of the funding will actually be better for us. We're waiting
Yeah.
sort of for that to come out. But yeah, when we do these planned warrants, we also do it based on resources and
Okay,
how we can.
well, I'm pleased to hear that.
Yeah.
Because, we're struggling with budgets as it is.
Yes.
And I hate to mention this, but you guys are a great big portion of our budget.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we need police officers. There's no ifs, ands, or buts, and the stats bear that out. So anyways, thanks for your work and thanks for your presentation. And hopefully we'll see some different stats next year.
Yes. They're going to go up. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gonna go up.
I know it doesn't look great, right? Like there's more crime. Well, actually we have more officers, so.
Okay. Councillor Pearson. Oh, wait, no, you're on the hook. I've got some questions too.
I've been all bottled up. I've been away.
Okay.
Thank you for the presentation. And it's always interesting to listen to the year-end report and look at the stats and, you try to, stats on paper and stats, what do they actually mean to us in public safety? So good work on, what I think is improving public safety in Sooke. I think that's the bottom line that I take away. One question, I have a couple, but question around this mischief, under 5,000 and over 5,000. Like, how come there's no, or how can you put that in as a bookmark under and over 5,000 without differentiate the overall numbers?
So the reason why I actually originally had the stats for a variety. So there's different types of mischief. It can be loss of enjoyment, unable, basically in relation to, say someone's blocking someone's property, the person can't get to their property, mischief, loss of enjoyment, mischief over 5,000, they go in there damaging something, mischief under, it's very much like theft under and theft over. There was a number of statistics, but essentially it was all mischief. So you're wondering why the increase in mischief?
No, sort of like, so you used 5,000 under and over 5,000 as a bookmark, but
Yeah, the
you
reason,
you didn't differentiate in the overall numbers, right?
yeah, the reason is in the criminal code, that is what it is. It's same as theft under or over 5,000. There's no other statistic for it.
Okay.
So when you get charged with mischief, it would be over 5,000 or under 5,000. Or there's mischief, like I said, loss of enjoyment or use of property.
Gotcha.
So when we, so there was a number of mischiefs that were coming over, but to not inundate with, a lot of it is like scoring codes
Gotcha.
in our database. I just put these for reference, but these are just the total numbers of mischief.
Yeah, and it was kind of alarming because I think 52% was provincial and 42% increase for Sooke.
Yeah, and I think for some of that is, I think first off, like I said, more police officers on the road, growing population, but I think for this as well is, in review, some officers, in the past were attending some of these files and they would be handled a specific way, maybe not without charges, and they would be scored a certain way. However, a criminal code offense had occurred. And the way that they need to do it is being documented as you investigated a criminal code offense, even though you did not charge the person, you were still called for a criminal code offense. So you do need to classify it as that. So I think that's also educating some of the officers into reporting it correctly would be also a small percentage of why there's the increase.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
And then last, I'll say this will be my last question. The common assault under age 18, big jump.
Let's see.
I think that was almost on the last page.
Yeah, you're thinking from 144 to 185?
Yeah,
Yeah. Again, like if there's an upward trend, growing population would be what we would report to. Like you mentioned before, there are specific locations that we do attend in the community. And again, not to create a stigma or
Mhm.
things like that, but there are some locations, like such as Hope Shelter. We will attend some of these places and we will have a number of offenses like this that are occurring. So these things can bring our statistics up. But again, it can be an upward trend and things fluctuate.
thank you. Good answers. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor St. Pierre.
Well, you've been thanked many times. I'll thank you again. I've got a couple of things. The first one is that I do find that it would be better if we had many, many years in terms of actually seeing the trends. But at the same time, I don't think the trends are really relevant. Because obviously the trends are going to go upwards as the population increases. And as we have more officers, we have more crimes reported.
Mhm.
So it's not necessarily indicative of whether or not we have greater public safety or whether or not there's an actually, qualitative change in the level of public safety. What I would like to see though, and you were asking what I'd like to see, I'd like to see more effort. And our great effort is already being made. So I'm not going to say you're not doing it because that's not true. As much effort as possible with your resources to work with the schools,
Mhm.
because I think being proactive and preventative is where it's at. I think the work that you're doing in terms of organized crime and stopping drug supplies is amazing, because again, that's preventative. The fact is you stop that shipment of drugs, that just means that there's X number of other smaller crimes that don't happen. And you don't necessarily see that in the stats. So the stats I think are kind of like, I don't know what to do with those. I think they're easy to interpret in all sorts of different ways. But if I want to see it public safety, I love what you're doing in terms of stopping organized crime for bringing large amounts of drugs into the community. And then we know that it's actually killing our young people
Yes.
and other people as well. So let's stop that as much as possible. The other thing is that I know from personal experience that the schools are also a place where people can be sucked into gangs and who knows what. So making sure that there's officers and available trusted adults that people can go to when they're having a rough time. And especially the people that are at risk, especially the people that others might consider bullies or whatever, them having someone they can talk to and go to. Critically important so those people don't actually become repeat offenders in the future.
Mhm.
That's not going to show up in your stats very well. So I'm saying, I don't know about the stats, but that's what I'd like to see.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so good questions all around. I've just got a couple of final ones. One, in addition to a request that in future we receive your annual reports ahead of time so we can pop them in the agenda and really absorb, because a lot to take in here. And thank you very much for a really thorough report here. You know, Staff Sergeant Wilcox was here a couple of weeks ago at our budget discussions, and we're moving ahead tonight, potentially, if council votes as such, to move the 5-year plan to first, second, and third reading, 5.5% tax increase for Sooke RCMP this year. And I think the key thing here is this General Investigative Services Unit, a first for Sooke. And I'm just wondering, from your perspective as an officer in the ranks, how will that make a difference to life as you proceed?
So my background, actually, I've done about almost a decade in major crime, so I will speak to this with experience. So in the general investigation section, what I know Staff Sergeant Wilcox reported before is there are specific files that we have what's called benchmark offenses that have to be investigated, not just investigated, but reported and documented in a specific manner. So we need specially trained officers, file coordinators that are able to investigate these files and then prepare a document to Crown Counsel. Because we have a MOU with Crown, the BC Prosecution Service and Police, where we have to provide a specific type of disclosure for these investigations to Crown. A lot of general duty officers, they don't have the experience here. But when we do have a general investigation section, we will have officers that will be trained in the ability to put those disclosures forward, as well as investigate. We do get a number of files from the BC ICE unit, the Child Exploitation Unit. They're very time consuming. They require several warrants before you're and production orders, not to get into the weeds. Before we locate our offender, we have to conduct surveillance, and then there's specialized, we conduct a search warrant. There's specialized techniques afterwards for having the cell phones and devices examined. All of those reports all have to be put forward to disclosure. So they're very time consuming and several hundred hours. So when we have a general investigation section, we will be able to have officers able to investigate those files that won't be taking time away from the police officers on the road, because the police officers in general duty, they may not have the experience to do them. And even when someone like myself or Staff Sergeant Wilcox or other people are mentoring them, having the time to actually get that file done, where you have the time to write the production order before the results have been deleted from Shaw or TELUS or wherever the offender's IP address is coming from, having the time to write the search warrant where it's going to be approved because it's in a reasonable amount of time. A lot of the time, the general duty officers just don't have the time to be able to get those done, because they do have to respond to calls for service that are ongoing. So with a general investigation section, they'll be able to deal with the BC ICE files plus any other files. Things like child assaults and things like that. That's not something obviously we're going to go out and be looking for. But when you have a general investigation section and you have say a child assault that has come forward, and now maybe it occurred at a daycare, and now you are required to interview all the parents and all the children at the daycare, where you need specialized officers that are able to interview those children as well as in a timely manner. If you have a general duty officer and they're working 4 days on, 4 days off, and this is taking time to do this investigation, sometimes that's not reasonable. We need specialized officers with specialized child training, disclosure, and the experience to conduct the investigations.
So my takeaway from all that is that with this new unit, we will see, you'll be able to address the more alarming categories we've seen tonight, short of murder, right?
Yes.
Effectively with this unit. Okay, so thank you for that. I'm very curious. I'm a big fan of these speed reader boards out on Grant Road and elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Are you utilizing that data that's being collected there for your own purposes, or do you work with integrated police units on that?
I haven't personally worked with the road safety unit for Speed Watch, but I know that Staff Sergeant Wilcox is engaged with Speed Watch, so he may be able to speak to that better. But yes, if we had Speed Watch and they tell us where they've, if we give them set locations and they provide us with statistics and we know that that is a high risk area, then when we reach out to URSU, we will advise them that these are the areas that we've been noticing have been targeted, and they would take that into account. So what happens the last time they were over, maybe I won't mention where they were in case it's going to be another trap. They had advised us the location they were planning on going, and I just sent officers to attend that day, and they did a bit of a joint project and they moved around to a few locations. Mhm.
Yeah, thank you. I think we are receiving this for information. Thank you. I think generally speaking, I will agree with Councillor Meadows that the performance plan as currently formulated is A-okay by me to move forward. I think others have said as much. So, thank you.
Okay.
Motion, yes, motion to receive. Councillor Beddoes and Councillor McMath is seconded. All approve? Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
And as Mayor Tate always says, you're welcome to stay. To our corporate officer.
Just a friendly reminder to the chair to call out the disposition of a vote.
We did, okay.
Again, you need to state out loud what the disposition is, not just say, yep. Was it carried or defeated?
It has carried
Thank you.
unanimously. Okay.
Thank you. Through your worship to council and the public here and everyone listening. Happy to speak to a couple items in the Chief Administrative Officer report today. A couple events coming up include CD Saturday on Saturday, March 29th, always a popular event. High Ground Hike, April 17th. Sooke-rama, Earth Day will be busy with Sooke-rama and Earth Day events around town. More information to come on those as the dates get closer. And Sooke Duck Day, May 3rd. Positions, postings. Currently, we are interviewing for a chief building official. Hopeful to have somebody secured sooner rather than later. We'll keep you posted on that. We, from the last CAO update, we've hired the 3 parks auxiliary laborers to complete that hiring for 2025. And one new position that is not on here, just with agenda timing, would be the Parks and Environmental Services Coordinator position. So Jessica Bolquist has given her notice. Her last day was actually in the office was Thursday, Friday officially. So she has provided her notice. She got an advancement opportunity close to us, so she's not going far. So sad to see her go, of course, but I'm happy for her. She worked with the district here in a full-time permanent staff capacity for over 8 years now. Was a contractor, parks contractor before that, before we even had a parks department. We had Jess. You know, I said this to her at her going away that, you know, her legacy that she left in Sooke will be seen in parks for years to come. She was an amazing employee. People, you know, she got promoted to her new role, which was a different challenge for her in a different way. And, but, you know, I believe, yeah, definitely her heart was in the parks department for sure. And took great pride in the parks and how they've been built out over the years in this community. So just want to wish her well on her future endeavor here. And I'm sure we'll be seeing her around soon. She's not too far from us. So, but her job is posted now. So if anyone's interested, listening online and is desperate to be our Parks and Environmental Services Coordinator, you got big shoes to fill. On that, what else? Community participation. The Sooke Region Museum and Visitor Information Center has a community-wide survey looking that talks about their current offerings and provides new ideas. And there's a link included in the agenda here to access their survey if anyone's interested. And as Deputy Mayor Bateman alluded to, if council gives 3 readings to the budget tonight, the next step in this process will be the budget open house, which will be occurring tentatively scheduled right now, obviously subject to change, for April 2nd from 2:30 to 7:30 in community or in the municipal hall here. And the last piece I wanted to touch on is like one of my favorite things we've ever done in Sooke, is these banners. I love these banners. When I saw the sample print for the banners, I was like, this is so cool. The partnership with the Sooke and Shelley Davies and the story behind them. It just really resonated with me. I thought, what a perfect Made in Sooke solution right there. It's something beautiful. It beautifies this town. You drive around town. It's a Made in Sooke. It's not just a generic banner of somebody you can get, every end of Munich could have this. This is a Made in Sooke one. It's got the amazing Sooke connection. And with the story of the phases of the moon, it's just really cool. And I'm really excited to see those around town. And hopefully, this is one of many things, we're trying to partner with the Sooke artists for future initiatives around Sooke. I'm really excited for that, and glad that we're lucky enough to have Miss Davies. I've heard from some other municipalities saying, you guys are very lucky you have such a talented artist. And I was like, yes, we are. So thank you, Miss Davies. At that, I'll leave that there and happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. So questions from anybody? Well, I have just a couple here. I'm curious, just a reminder of our discussions around the by-election. As I understand it, it will be coming forward on April 7th, our meeting 2 Mondays from now.
Yes, well, I don't think that was included in my report, but happy to address that. Yes, my understanding.
Well, absolutely. As the CAO, I think
Yeah.
we're welcome to ask any questions of you at this time.
For sure.
you.
Yes, from a few meetings ago, council directed staff to bring back the report on April 7th. So that is the plan, to bring that back and then seek further direction from council. We know a couple of the answers, because at the original time when it got deferred to April 7th, it was, are we doing a referendum with this? And one of the other touch points was the federal election timing. So
Right.
council's provided direction a few meetings ago on the referendum to include that with the 2026 general election. And the federal election, as we know, was called on Sunday. So staff will be seeking direction from council on the 7th here on next steps.
Okay, thank you for that refresher. I'm also curious with these atmospheric rivers. I hear Sun River, there's been some issues with stormwater management up there. Can you give me an update on that? Or if anyone through you?
Yeah, through to the deputy mayor. Sorry, wrong title. Yeah, so that's something staff have been dealing with today in the engineering department as these calls for service are coming in, is just triaging and assessing them, and just making sure these people understand, the next steps and what the municipality can do immediately and not. Most of these, if it's private properties, would involve an insurance claim. So we're trying to make sure people understand that piece. And for anything that has come up on public property, again, that's what the staff have been dealing with today, is just getting out there and triaging those and assessing, is there something we can do immediately? Is there something that needs to wait? Is there a risk to health and safety that would warrant that? My understanding is, I think we're still just gathering all that information for today. There's nothing major that instills like immediate action.
Thank you very much. Okay, Councillor Pearson.
Yes, to the chair. Thank you for your report. So as we don't have a mayor now for a month and 4 or 5 days, so is our plan to operate with the acting mayors, or is there a plan in her absence? I know I recognize it's just new. So right now, what is our plan? No plan, or just wing it?
No plan.
Sorry.
Through your worship to Councillor Pearson, I would definitely wouldn't say no plan. I believe the plan is, as council does every year, they appoint a deputy mayor for 2-month, 3-month cycles, depending on where we're at. So as far as our staff's understanding is, the plan would be that the deputy mayor will fill that seat for the next 5 or 6 weeks until we receive different direction from the current mayor. And as long as we have quorum, we are carrying on with the business of the day and decisions to be made, and then seek further direction on the timing of the by-election on April 7th. So yeah, the plan would be the deputy mayor to fill that role in a more fulsome capacity than they have in the past potentially, but that's the plan we have today.
Yeah. And the reason I ask is because it's never come up before since I've been on council for an actual absence of the mayor. It's been like here and there. We've had an acting mayor step in. So our plan now is to run with, so essentially Councillor Bateman is the mayor, acting mayor from or deputy mayor, but you're filling the role of mayor from now until we know the outcome of the federal election. Is that? Yeah, okay, just, so we're not guessing, right? So you're the mayor. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Well, to be clear, I'm the deputy mayor, and that's a different kettle of fish, but I will be chairing the meetings in April. I think there's 3 of them. And I think there's very much a plan here, which is rooted in the Community Charter and Local Government Act. And this is certainly not the first time a mayor has stepped away to run for, certainly in Sooke, yes. And we had the example in Ladysmith not so long ago when Mayor Stone stepped down and they carried on with their deputy or acting mayors, as I think they're called in Ladysmith.
And through you, back to you, is that the reason I'm asking is the public's asking, right? You know, what is the plan going forward? So now we have we have a public record. You're the deputy mayor from now until we hear differently.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Till May, and then Deputy Mayor Beddoes will take over. And if we don't, yeah, ideally we'll have a mayor by the time you're deputy mayor. I think you start in August. July it is, okay. Yeah,
Hopefully
okay.
May, June, July. You do August.
So I'd be happy to swap, but I don't think that's possible at this point. Anyway, here we are. So I think we'll close off that section. The report of the Chief Administrative Officer. I think motion to receive for information, Councillor St. Pierre, Councillor Beddoes, all approved. That is a unanimous vote in favor. Okay. Public question and comment period. I see 5 people in the audience tonight.
Ellen Lewis. I just have a question with the attachment chief individual application priority with the town center and Sun River critical sanitary waste and water and storm infrastructure project. Is that part of the budget? Is it in our budget already? Well, on page 2, it says the council's. Well, I'm just, okay, I'm just asking the question, is that part of our budget? Is it in the present budget? Too many other questions to ask, so I'll just leave it at that. Oh, I guess with, I did want to ask about the financial open house. So could that open house be a little better organized so that because so many people say, I can't come after work. I can't come on a Saturday, blah, 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 because they've got kids going soccer, whatever. I think you have to make 3 different dates available in the week and times to accommodate everybody because everyone's busy. And different places, even if it's not here, maybe community hall used to be a popular place to do it in the community hall upstairs. So I think that has to be really well managed so that more people have access to the financial plan. Thank you.
Okay, further questions? Seeing no takers. Opportunity for a second time speaker. Okay. We have the consent agenda, item 8. Now, we'll put this on the floor. The motion is, who would like to move this? Councillor St. Pierre. So does anyone wish to pull anything from the consent agenda at this point? I see the corporate officer.
Pardon me, I was distracted. Did we get a seconder?
We did not get a seconder. Councillor Pearson, thank you. So do we call a vote at this point? Okay, I'll call the vote. Wait, well, that was my question. Yeah, okay. So anything from the correspondence package? I do have a couple of items I'd like to pull. Item 17, knotweed infestation. Item 25, the Victoria Family Court Annual Report. And item 27, animal control. That would be for discussion 2 weeks hence. Okay, so on that note, we'll have a vote. All in favor? And that is unanimous. Thank you. Communities Canada Housing Infrastructure Fund grant opportunities through CAO Gray to Mr. Carter, I believe.
Perfect. Thank you through the Deputy Mayor to Council. Housing Infrastructure and Communities Canada opened up a federal Canada Housing Infrastructure funding stream around the middle of December, similar to the ATF stream. Deadline for application submissions are set for March 31st, 2025. The funding stream provides opportunities for multiple project application submissions for up to $100 million projects, eligible for 50% funding. Accordingly, staff have prepared 2 priority-based application projects for council's consideration, one being Town Center and Sun River Critical Sanitary and Wastewater Storm Infrastructure, and the second priority being the Western Town Center and Broomhill Critical Sanitary Wastewater Infrastructure. Collectively, the projects both encompass almost the entire suburban area of Sooke, which is also aligned with the OCP's community growth area. The eligibility requirements under this funding stream are focused on projects that clearly demonstrate the benefits of continued investment in the rehabilitation, expansion, and new construction of required stormwater, water infrastructure, as well as sanitary infrastructure that supports the acceleration and creation of new housing supply and sustainable densification that's aligned with the new legislated mandates for small housing units that's been put onto us by the provincial government. Moreover, these projects are to remove the current capacity barriers that are mandated or that enable the construction of sustainable number of affordable housing units, which in turn will increase the housing supply within Sooke and provide sustainable densification in these areas. For the priority 1 application projects, all of the components, except for one of them, are included in the district's current 5-year financial plan, as well as the financial plan that's being proposed for consideration. Most of the sanitary projects have already been identified as capacity constraints in the district system in the 2020 Stantec modeling capacity report. All the projects that are identified, the project components in our priority 1 application, have been earmarked under this application for construction in 2027 through 2029. The priority 2 application that we have, 2 of the components are large gravity main upgrades that have capacity constraints in our sanitary system. They're also identified in our Stantec modeling capacity report, and they're anticipated to be next in line for consideration in the district's 5-year financial plan. Additionally, all the sanitary modeling that we've conducted through 2025, conducting sensitivity analysis in alignment with the new SMU legislation, have confirmed the scope of these 2 gravity main projects, as well as further identified the components 9 and 10 in application 2, which is the rehabilitation of 2 of our primary lift stations in the community. These projects are also really proactive to consider for completion, as the lift station upgrades, even though they're 20 years old, they have a lot of outdated electrical infrastructure and PLC components that are needing replacement. These projects into the secondary application priority are earmarked under this application for construction in 2029 through 2031. Inclusion of all applicable projects into the district's 5-year financial plan with updated project costs will be presented to council for consideration during 2026 budget deliberations, following knowledge of application success under this CHIF fund, as well as our active transportation fund. Right now, we do not know if we'll be successful with all of the grants. It would be very hopeful that we would be successful with both our priority one applications, but there is no grant requirement to have these updated immediately into the 5-year financial plan. And it makes more sense to have that done in 2026 budget deliberations once we know what our status is of success. Details of all the project components under each of these priority applications are included in this report, and I'm happy to answer any questions following my presentation. As the ATF grant estimates were put together, all these project estimates for the project funding applications were prepared following grant requirements as well as best engineering practices to ensure that the grant opportunities are maximized so that the worst case project costs are accounted for as they're in later years and realized for construction over the next 6 to 8 years. Priority one application presents also a major grant stacking opportunity aligned with the priority one application that the district has already submitted under the ATF fund for the Phillips Throop Connector project, expansion and upgrades from Highway 14 to Church Roundabout. For clarification, I'll provide a bit of a breakdown of the costs associated with priority one application, as well as our priority two application. This information is already provided and included in the financial implications section of the report. So for the priority one application, which addresses all the town center sanitary and storm infrastructure that will support sustainable development in the town center where growth is aimed and focused under the OCP, as well as the critical sanitary wastewater and storm infrastructure we've identified as calling it the Sun River. Those project components are the ones that are also included in our ATF application that present the grant funding and stacking opportunity. So the total project cost for application one is just over $21 million. The CHIF grant application in this report is for $10.5 million of funding approximately. And the district's contribution for this application would be the 50% cost, which is also $10.5 million. I've identified in the report in my report that the actual project contribution is about $3.6 million. This is an anticipated amount. We won't know the exact amount, but what we do know is that even though council is committing to 10 million, just over $10 million on paper, that the actual commitment is substantially less because a lot of these project components and partial project components are already included in the ATF application under the grant amount as well as the district contribution amount. So even though we're committing to $10 million on paper, it will be substantially less than that. And we will be able to ratify that as these get closer to project completion and if we find out if we are actually successful with these grants and the stacking opportunities. What we do know is if we are successful with both the priority one applications under this CHIF fund as well as the ATF fund, that it will reduce the cost of the Throop Connector project by approximately $3 to $4 million. The secondary application, which we're hopeful that we would get as well, but again, it would be more realistic that we would maybe successful with just priority one application. The priority two application has two critical gravity main capacity constraints that are identified in our sanitary system and includes also two of our main primary lift stations for upgrades and expansion. These projects are earmarked at later outdates for 29 to 2031. The total project cost associated with this application is just under $17 million. The grant amount would be for approximately $8.5 million and the district's contribution on paper would be the 50% of additional $8.5 million as well. Ultimately, like the purpose of making these grant applications, a lot of these through the ATF fund as well as this fund, they're critical infrastructure projects where there's deficiencies in the district system, whether transportation, sanitary, or storm. And the ultimate purpose is to put these opportunities forward to see if we can get success under these grant streams to ultimately reduce the cost of these projects for the taxpayers and residents of Sooke. District's portion of these projects is anticipated to come from and can come from a combination of development cost charges, asset management reserves under the general fund and the soon to be presented asset management sewer fund, which will be presented to council for consideration in 2026. It can come out of sewer reserve funds and under the sewer fund as it's replacing existing infrastructure in those systems. It can come out of community works reserves, various other districts reserves as well. And there may be opportunities over in the coming years for new grants that will allow further stacking, that will give us more funding offsets to reduce the cost of these projects. There's also options that can be looked at for short and long-term borrowing. Of note, there likely will be insufficient funds in DCC reserves for funds to finance the district's portion of the projects. However, there are options that any major developments that are within the service area of these projects may be asked or provided the opportunity to front end the district's portion of the project cost under front ender agreements. So how that kind of works is when there's projects identified in the district's development cost charge program, development pays for those when they pay their DCCs. And ultimately, if the district does not have sufficient funds to go forward with these DCC projects, we have developed front-ender agreements that are very common for municipalities where the district or developers within the district would front-end the cost of the developments or these projects. And because they're already paying DCCs for these projects, the district then pays the developer back with DCC funds that come in annually based on a certain percentage for a period of 10 years. I don't have anything else to add to the presentation, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Carter, for the latest in a growing line of really exceptional grant applications. For those at home, ATF is the Active Transportation Fund, and we're currently talking tonight about the Canada Housing Infrastructure Fund grant. These are two federal grants open this year. So over to Council, Councillor St. Pierre.
My first question is really around the turnaround time. When did the grant become available? When did they open up for applications? Because it sounds like the turnaround time was mighty short. That would make me think that shovel-ready projects like these would have possibly a better chance. So I'd just like some comments on that, and then I have a further question.
Yes, that's correct. They opened up this grant stream around the middle of December and they closed it March 31st, so early into this new year. They did that specifically, I believe, and it was strategic to basically make sure that people that were applying were absolutely ready for these projects, because a lot of senior management and local governments are away on holidays and coming back in January and may not have known about them till they got back in place. Yes, under this application stream, being shelf ready will increase the chances of success. And under this grant stream, unlike the ATF fund, these projects are being reviewed as applications are submitted and approved. So they're looking at a first come, first served basis. We are going to definitely meet the deadline of the grant application, and hopefully we have a really good chance of success.
Perfect. So my further question is with regards to probably what a lot of people, you look at the sticker shock of the 10.5, and I think you've already covered that in your presentation, but I just want to go over this one more time. So in terms of the money that the district and council is basically, taking on as a responsibility, first of all, that depends on whether or not we actually accept the grant. Because if we get the grant and do not accept the grant, we're not responsible for the 10.5 million. And I think that would be dependent on whether or not it all works together with the other pieces and so on, the ATF funding or whatever else is in the works, and how we can actually stack those grants. My understanding is that if we don't actually apply for the grants, we have no opportunity to actually reduce the cost to the taxpayers in the long run, and that all of these projects are critical infrastructure projects that would have to happen sometime in the next 10 years. So I just want to make sure that I got that straight. If you could nod to the room at large or just a little bit.
Everything that you said is correct.
Perfect. Okay. So at this point, we're looking at making a grant application for money that would potentially reduce taxpayers' burden on critical infrastructure projects. We are not actually tied down to it unless we accept the grant. But if we don't make the application, we don't have the opportunity to reduce those costs.
Yes, that's correct. If we were successful with any of these grant opportunities as well, we would still have the years until the projects were actually implemented to come up with our share. And then at that time, if we determined we could not come up with our share, two options could be taken. One, we could walk away from the grant opportunity and we would have no financial implications associated with the commitments today. Or two, we could request the grant partners for an extension to push the projects out into the further out years of 2029 to 2031, or even beyond that, if they were accepting requests for extensions.
Okay, and I have one final question. It's actually perhaps for Ms. Liu. I think we had a conversation some time ago, but I think what I heard was that in a situation like this, if there was no other money to be had, as long as the interest rates are low, it's actually absolutely worth it for our taxpayers to actually borrow the money at a low interest rate to make these projects happen. And I just wanted you to comment on that because I don't think that's something that's necessarily well understood.
Yes, no, that is correct. Exactly what you said, that is correct. Another really important piece, and that's why working collectively with the finance department, we've brought forward these asset management strategies for council's consideration annually during the budget cycles. It's been put forward. This is the second year now for an increase for asset management, and that is for the general fund, which includes all assets in the district, with the exception of wastewater. Wastewater, we would be bringing forward through 2026 for council's consideration to start contributing to that on an annual basis. In my opinion, why it's so very important to contribute to these funds: one, it's necessary to replace aging infrastructure, but two, with grant opportunities like this on the table, the small percentage of contributions that are considered annually by council bring in compounding amounts of money associated with those increases every year. So say with 2 years started bringing in 400,000, within 3 years of commitments, you could bring in $600,000 a year. And then at that point, if you need to find the funding for the district shares of the projects, and we were not able to find it with other resources, an option with the asset management coming in, you can use that money to leverage short-term loans and then pay back that money with the asset management revenue coming in. So if you had commitments for a few years under asset management funds, you could take out a small loan to come up with the share of the project if you could not find it in other sources, and then use those annual funds coming in to pay back a short-term loan to come up with your share of the project costs for these. It's a little bit complicated, but there's a lot of good financial strategies in place, but ultimately it is a good problem to have to try and find the share of the money if we are in fact successful with these applications.
Thank you very much.
Okay, over to Councillor Pearson and then McMath.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. Thank you for following up on these grants, because I think it is an opportunity. Couple of things in there, and we've been down this road before where we've had these grant funding in place and then we turn down the borrowing. So my question through the chair to our finance department: what's our latitude in short-term borrowing in a project? If we were successful in a grant and it was in the short term, within 2 to 4 years, can we come up with short-term money on a finance? Like how much latitude do we have in that aside from referendum? Can we cover that gap in short-term borrowing is my first question.
Through the chair to Councillor Bateman, the province has a robust process on how to measuring the debt servicing limit for municipality. Overall, at high level, they just advise that we shouldn't borrow more than 25% of our revenue.
Correct.
So for us, the majority of our revenue is tax dollars.
Right.
Yeah. So as a rule of thumb, we shouldn't exceed 25% of the tax dollars.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And that helps me understand that. And then through the chair to our Director of Engineering, I always, and I know the answer to this, but I have to ask it. So when we support a grant, we also agree to any cost overruns, and that risk. How do you see that cost overrun risk? Is that based on our portion, or is it based on the entire project? So as an example, that one's worth $21 million, and we have to go on the hook for the cost overruns. That could be substantial, even at 10%, right?
Yeah, that's correct. So, yes, all grant requirements, making these applications, have municipalities to commit to the project cost, their share, as well as any cost overruns. Ultimately, though, with tendering out these projects, you will have a very good indication of where these project costs will be at the time of tender. Now, there are also options after you tender out a project. If you tender out a project and it is substantially over budget and you know you're going to exceed these costs, you do have the option of collapsing a tender. You can collapse a tender and you can always re-tender a project within a year later, as long as the scope has changed within like 10% of what you've tendered out already. So other things that we've done, which I believe council does have some questions on regarding the other application, is we've been very proactive in putting these estimates together. So there are substantial contingencies put into these estimates that are 20% contingencies for the project that are in alignment with the grant expectations, as well as very high allocations for stuff such as project management, contract administration, as well as engineering inspections throughout the projects. Typically, that is about a 12% figure. It ends up being around 4% a lot of times, but you'll see that in the larger projects. So we do have a 12% contingency or allocation in for that. What we've also done, and it is following best engineering practices, any of these projects that are anticipated for construction in the out years, we have basically based the worst case of construction inflation that we've seen realized in the last 4 years in the South Island and around the province. So we have accounted for approximately 10% construction inflation in all these project estimates. So that combined with a 20% contingency is ultimately a 30% contingency on the project. And then at the time of tender is the gut check. That's when we tender it out. That's when we see what the bids are. If we're confident that that tender price, that we will not go over what these are as allocated and we will have no cost overruns, we could go forward with the project, or alternately collapse the project, collapse the tender, and give back the grant money.
Excellent answer, because I was going to ask you about the inflationary, delaying those projects out to 29 to 2031. And we've got to take into the factor of that inflationary pressure as well, because, a $10 million project today by 2031 could be a $20 million project just in straight inflation, right? Could almost double in that 6 or 7 years. Okay, thank you. And then just one more question for the Director of Engineering. Could you expand, I think I know what front-ender agreements are. Could you expand it just a little bit so that people at home are listening as well as me? It's for my benefit as well as people who may be listening.
For sure.
Thank you.
So there's two of these types of agreements. One of them is a latecomer agreement, which I'm sure everyone's familiar with. They've heard a lot about that. Those are for projects where developments occur and large infrastructure requirements are needed. If they are not in the district's development cost charge program, then those are what latecomer agreements would be for. The developer puts in that infrastructure, and then as people develop and connect to that infrastructure, they pay the developer a latecomer fee that ends up paying them back for that portion of the project. Front-ender agreements are very similar, but they're for projects that are within the district's development cost charge program. So a major development happens, and basically they're going to pay all their DCC fees. But when the district looks at a development cost charge project and goes, this project needs to go into place, and particularly needs to go into place for a development that is occurring, but we cannot afford it because we do not have the DCC funds built up in our reserves, then we would basically go forward to a potential developer and say, look, you need to front end the cost of this entire project. You're already paying for it within the DCC programs. So then the district ends up paying back the front-ending developer through our development cost charge revenue that's coming in. Now, we've set up and put forward front-ender policies for council's consideration last year, and I believe it is sitting at approximately, if a front-ender agreement is entertained, the developer would be paid back 30 to 40% of our development cost charge revenue coming in during the year for a period of 10 years. And that is the only guarantee. If we do not have revenue coming in, there's no payments made back to the front ending developer. If we have revenue coming in, they get 40%, 30 to 40% of that revenue, and it's only for a period of 10 years. So there is a little bit of risk, more so for a developer front ending something than for the municipality itself.
And excellent, thank you for that. So if we identify any project as a DCC project, and we would just randomly pick the Throop Road Connector as a DCC road, can we front end from all projects, all DCC projects in the district to that? Can that be offered to all major developers at that moment in time?
Just for clarification, you're asking if the Throop Road Connector project could be front-ended by a developer? It could, but I don't believe any developer would consider it because ultimately they would be paying right now a substantial amount, could be $35 to $50 million for that project, and they would only be guaranteed 40% of our roadwork DCC money coming in for the next 2 years, so it would be an absolute loss to them. So most likely they wouldn't consider front-ending one of those projects.
And I use that as an example because it's a high priced one. So, but if we identified it as DCCs, it in effect can become a DCC road, but maybe not likely to be a front ender type agreement in those big high dollar ones.
Correct. It
Thank you.
is in the DCC program, but very highly unlikely to be front-ended.
Thank you. Good answers.
Good questions. Councillor McMath.
I was trying to pull up our 5-year percentage in our budget plan. How does this weave into that? Is that going to bring the forecasted percentages down or up?
So the question is are these included in the 5-year financial plan right now?
Yeah, how is it represented in the 5-year financial plan? Is it based off the success of us getting this grant, us doing the work just as is with no support? How's it reflected in the 5-year forecast?
Perfect. No, I can answer that, and Miss Lou could add in if she has any further comments to make. But a lot of these projects, especially in application 1, are within the district's 5-year financial plan. There might be funding allocation, which is very typical for the financial plan for the 4 years out of the current year, where it says funding would be available from grants and other sources. So a lot of it is grant dependent. Hope that answers your question.
Through the chair to Councillor McMath. I believe you're asking if these projects will impact the tax increase.
Correct.
Absolutely nothing, because we don't finance capital projects out of current year's tax dollars. The capital projects are 100% financed from grants, DCC's reserves, and borrowing. There's no impact on current year tax levy.
Perfect.
So this is the reason that we strongly recommend council keep the 2% contribution to the asset management reserve. So that's how we finance these projects is the money out of the reserve.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Beddoes.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Just the staff, I understand the necessity of this, and I thank that staff, engineering and finance put a lot of work into it, because to have these shovel-ready projects that we can go ask for grants, because quite frankly, we're dead in the water in this community if we don't get grants for our infrastructure. Our tax base just doesn't allow anything else. Some of those numbers are a bit scary, but he did a very good job of explaining where that money comes from and how we will pay for things if needed. And that's the big thing, if needed, if these applications come through. But if we don't go for them, I can guarantee nothing will happen. And that's kudos for staff for working on this, and let's see where this lies in the future. no immediate tax considerations, a lot of money here, but a lot of work needs to be done. So just basically a statement. Thanks.
Okay, so let's get the motion on the floor. Who would like to move? Councillor St. Pierre? Well, we'll need a
All right.
seconder on that.
Okay.
Does he read it first? Okay.
The council supports the Town Center and Sun River Critical Sanitary Wastewater and Storm Infrastructure Project and confirms that this project will be tender ready in 2027 for anticipated construction 2027 through 2029 at a total project cost of $21,268,579. And that council support the funding application in the amount of $10,634,289 to the Housing Infrastructure and Communities Canada Housing Infrastructure Fund. And the council commits to the district share of the total remaining project cost in the amount of $10,634,290, as well as any project cost overruns. That council support the Western Town Center and Broom Hill Critical Sanitary Wastewater Infrastructure Project and confirms that this project will be tender ready in 2029 for anticipated construction 2029 through 2031 at a total project cost of $16,993,000. And that council support the funding application in the amount of $8,486,500 to the Housing Infrastructure and Communities Canada Housing Infrastructure Fund. And the council commits to the district's share of the total remaining project cost in the amount of $8,496,500, as well as any project cost overruns.
Thank you. Any seconder for that? Councillor Beddoes has seconded. So over to you for motivation, if you wish.
Nope.
Councillor Beddoes?
Yeah, it's mind-boggling, actually. It's a lot of money to commit to the future, but I mean, it is out to 2031. And again, staff has explained how this all works, and yeah, I'm happy to second that.
Councillor St. Pierre, Pearson, St. Pearson.
Yeah. I don't know what the total is there by Chihuahua. I think, when we're talking about 40 or 50, 40 million, I guess is kind of where we're in that ballpark. That's a significant amount of commitment for a long time, and it'll be long beyond some of us at council. But I guess it's the sticker shock of looking at it and we put our hands up and then you go away and there's realization after what you voted on, and it doesn't go, it's not going lightly in my brain about committing to 40 million. And I think about when I first came to council in 2011 and to be thinking about we turned down the Charters Road or the Throop Road extension, I think, for a total of about $7 or $8 million somewhere in there, and now we're talking about 20-something million to do that. So no, that's what I mean. We've been down this road before where we start committing to things, and then when we have to go borrow the money, the resistance from the electorate tells us no. So it's always a risk to this, but anyways, it's not lightly. We're spending a lot of money here.
So I'll be the first time speaker here, and just I agree that these are scary numbers, but I think we've received the reassurance that if the grant is received and we're not in a position to move forward with it, we can withdraw and or push it down the road. So yeah, mind-boggling, someone said, I think is a good word for that. Anyway, Councillor St. Pierre.
Just want to comment just very briefly because obviously there is a lot of sticker shock, but at the same time, it's important to realize that this is actually us hoping to receive a whole bunch of money that basically goes into infrastructure projects that, in fact, based on what Ms. Liu made eminently clear, this doesn't go onto the taxpayers. These capital projects are paid through DCC's grants and borrowing in different ways. So this is not actually something that our taxpayers will bear the brunt of, period, end of sentence. Having said that, I remember back when the entire transportation master plan came forward and someone said, well, that's worth about 25 million. And the interest rates were around 1% at that point in time. You know, the present I would like for this, like, if I had known then what I know now, we would have just borrowed 25 million at 1%, and that would be that. So there's a piece here where we have to move forward with these things when the opportunity, and it does not get cheaper in the future. And when this sort of thing comes to us, and we're actually in the blessed position, thanks to good work, of being shelf ready and ready to ask, go over the money when they want to give it to us. Ay, chihuahua. Let's go. So thank you. Okay, so let's.
Calling the vote, all in favor. And we have a unanimous carrying of that motion. So we're moving into item 9.2 on our agenda tonight, and that is a funding application. We will regather here in 7 minutes. 10 minutes is too long, 7 minutes. 7:38, so we'll get back in business here. Let's see. So we're moving to item 9.2, funding application to UBCM's Next Generation 911 application-based funding stream. So over to staff for a report.
Thank you. So staff are seeking council support in submitting a grant application, which could provide 100% funding for the Next Generation 911 or NG 911 implementation and public awareness project for the District of Sooke. For those who might not be aware, NG 911 is under development to modernize emergency response by enabling digital communication, including real-time text, improved location identification, and future capabilities such as images and video. This technology is intended to improve emergency response times, enhance accessibility for individuals with disabilities, and allow more accurate communication between dispatchers and first responders. If successful, this project will allow us to provide more fulsome communication to the community, including signage and support for our tourism partners and rural area residents. If not successful with the application, the project will be scaled appropriately to not incur the additional costs such as the signage at this time. With that, should you have any questions, I'm happy to receive them.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Mogg, for that report. Questions? Councillor St. Pierre.
Just a quick one. My understanding was that these upgrades were actually being required.
Through your worship, so that is correct. So we did receive $45,000 of direct award funding to make sure that our system, the technology speaks between our GIS system and this new system. So that's under development right now. This would be to go above and beyond that and to do a communication project with our community and enhance signage at some of our gateway areas where you'd be going out into the woods as one example, or with some of our rural area residents. So where the properties are larger and providing more identifying signage at the properties themselves and then within locations on their sites specifically as well.
And my understanding is it's 100% grant funding. Is there any cost to the district at all in terms of management or whatever?
So the cost would be a rough estimate of staff time, namely myself and our head of GIS. So a rough estimate would through just staff time, so not an additional cost, would be about 15,000 over the course of just over a year. So the duration of the project from should we be successful and then realizing it, it would start this fall, be realized by Q2, so summer 2026 is sort of the timeline we're on. So within the resolutions that are being presented for council's consideration is also acknowledging that commitment of staff time with a nominal amount for myself and like I said, our head of GIS.
And my final question is, what are the direct benefits to the community in terms of this investment?
So for the rural properties, there's a really specific benefit as far as the unified universal identifying signage for their markers on their properties. Then also for anybody who's taking advantage of the remarkable nature and tourism spaces, that's where our predominant focus for our grant application would be on. So say you're heading up hiking in the Sooke potholes, providing gateway signage and education around this platform so that if you are, and sadly, we have had people that are lost in those areas, how they can benefit through this technology in calling for dispatch services. And I'm sure, not to put Councillor McMath on the spot, but she can probably better speak to some of these details than I can, so.
Yes, Councillor McMath.
I just had a question. Can you give me an example, like what exactly would be on the sign? Like using your example of the potholes. So you're gonna have like a signage like at the front gate or like at the secondary parking lot and then how are you coordinating with like GIS to have a location inputted into there to validate like we call them CPNs as commonplace name. So if someone is from out of town, they can say, for example, I'm at the second parking lot and I could use a lat long if it's been inputted in there. So I could just search the name in the computer and then it will bring up a lat long location. So I was just curious what that's going to look like.
That is exactly some of the work that we're looking to undertake.
Okay.
So there is some consultancy wages within the grant application that we take a deeper dive to prioritize those particular areas, because certainly the budget doesn't go very far when it comes to signage.
Yeah, I bet.
So determining what are with our first responders, what are the priority locations, and then going from there. So it's a bit premature for me to more specifically answer that question at this time.
Sure. And then can a portion of that budget, if successful, could it go towards, like, we could have a program where people could have free signage for their own homes?
That is exactly part of the scope with the addressing that we're looking to achieve, and we have identified that within our budget as one of the line items.
Okay, perfect.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think we're, Councillor Pearson.
And through the chair to Director of Communications. So it sounds good, and I recognize 100,000 doesn't go very far in size. So is it just within Sooke's boundaries? Like, I mean, obviously, when you get to the potholes, you're right on the edge of Sooke's boundaries. And when you get to Sea to Sky, Greenbelt, you know, is that where the signage would be, at the edge of our boundaries?
So again, those specifics aren't yet determined from the property owners that Councillor McMath was speaking to in her last question. Yes, it would be, and also with our First Nation partners. So we have received a letter of support from the Sooke Nation, and I'll be following up with Shiano Nation as well in that capacity.
Okay. And what about our friends in Juan de Fuca who are our neighbors? So just not included?
They have the same opportunity to apply for funding should they
Okay.
desire.
Okay, thank you. And last question, do we share something that would have natural synergy with our partners in Juan de Fuca? Do we reach out to them and say, hey, you know, this is something that you should have a look at, as an example?
Absolutely. And I'll seize this opportunity to take a pitch for the April 17th Hike for High Ground, which you're doing in collaboration with those partners. So absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Beto is going to make a motion, but I had a final question, and that is this 15% of the time we'll be losing. How do you see your work, quote unquote, suffering by taking on this 15%?
The reality is that the work is coming regardless, as Councillor St. Pierre said. It's to what scope that we can really reap the opportunity to maximize the benefit to our community. So staff see this as an opportunity to really extend the return on the investment. We need to accommodate it. It is coming, so we need to do some scope, but to really have that direct immediate return for our residents is why staff are seeking to leverage this grant opportunity.
Councillor Beddoes.
Right, I'd like to make the motion. I suspect I have to read it out, so I will start doing that. That council endorse a funding application to UBCM Next Generation 911 application-based funding stream for $100,000 for the project titled Next Generation 911 NG 911 Implementation and Public Awareness Project, District of Sooke. That council endorse in-kind support valued at $15,000 for the form of select staff resources, namely the Manager Communications and Community Relations and Head of Geographical Information Systems for the project title Next Generation 911 NG 911 Implementation and Public Awareness Project, District Sooke. That council authorized staff provide an overall project and grant management to receive and administer this funding. That's my motion. Thank you.
Okay, seconded by Councillor McMath. Motivations or from either of you?
No, actually, anytime we can get $100,000 out of UBCM, I'm happy to do that. So no, this is good, and Ms. Mogg has explained it very well and willing to do the work, which she's going to be doing anyway. So hey, no, it's a good thing.
Just from a risk management standpoint, I think this is so great, and I do hope we're successful. So for example, if I get a 911 phone call and someone's like, oh, I'm at Sooke Sam, like, I know what that means. I know where that is. But for anyone else that's not familiar with the area, or they don't know, but they have like they're at the potholes, but they don't know really where they are, it's just going to reduce the response time significantly, which is great. So thank you.
Okay, so all in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. So moving to 9.3, local authority designation of fire inspectors and fire investigators. So over to Chief Kennedy.
Thank you. And through the deputy mayor and members of council, just respectful of time and tonight's agenda, I'll try to move through this quite quickly just to summarize this resolution. So the BC Fire Safety Act first received its royal assent in 2016 and then has been a work in progress until recently coming into effect last year, replacing the Fire Service Act. So part of the Act's requirements is that each local government's responsible for designating persons or a class of persons in writing to act as the local authorities, fire inspectors, or fire investigators for the purpose of administering the act. This designation provides the designees with the ability to utilize the powers enabled by this new act, and then all previous powers under the preceding Fire Service Act are then revoked. So the focus tonight is just to have our local authority, which in our case is the council of our municipality, designate the fire chief and delegates as fire inspectors and fire investigators for the purpose of performing fire inspections and fire investigations within the district of Sooke. So this formal designation also provides these designees with the powers enabled by the act. So just for context, in the past, the fire chief used to have this authority and he or she would designate an LAFC, which is a local assistant to the fire commissioner. And within that designation would be our inspectors and our investigators. So now that authority is now being transferred to the municipalities. So now utilizing the resolution process seems to be the common direction followed by most municipalities right now. And then following up with any additional changes to the fire bylaws that will reflect these new changes. So in terms of our timelines for our fire department, after following this resolution, we would be moving forward to confirm and document that our new designated inspectors and investigators meet the minimum training requirements that are outlined by the Office of the Fire Commissioner. And then we would be looking to carry out some of our revisions to our fire bylaw later in the year when we look at that as a wholesome project. So if there's any other questions, I'm hoping this is quite straightforward and but if there's questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Questions? Councillor Beddoes and then St. Pierre.
Yeah, through the chair to the chief. Tell me again who did this before? That went so quickly. I know you're interested time. But you said before, the local fire chief, which would be you, was the fire inspector, right? It wasn't a provincial person? And then that person, can you explain that again, please? I didn't quite catch that.
Yeah, so through the deputy mayor to Councillor Beddoes, in the past with the Fire Service Act, and trust me, I get it confused too, because it's Fire Service Act, Fire Safety Act, new labels. The powers of the fire chief through the Fire Service Act used to give them the power to delegate who their inspectors and their investigators are. And it was up to them and the responsibility of the fire department to make sure that they are qualified to do such acts. Now with the new Fire Safety Act, the Office of the Fire Commissioner is moving that authority to municipalities, to the local authority to actually designate those positions themselves. So it's changed the rule from the fire chief now to the municipality.
Okay, I guess.
That doesn't mean that the fire chief was the inspector.
Okay.
At times they were, but there's also fire chief, deputy fire chief, or fire officer.
I was concerned that it might be an offloading by the provincial government again, but basically what it is, it's giving, what it was the fire chief, now it's council that can appoint fire chief. Yeah, I understood. Okay.
Yeah, in all respects, we're going to be doing business just as usual. It's just a different way of designating that position.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor St. Pierre and then Pearson.
Sorry, through your deputation. To staff. I'll get it straight to you. So my question here is in terms of how does council have any sort of background or information or knowledge to actually be able to do this? That'll be my first question, because it feels sort of ridiculous. Let's be perfectly honest. I don't know how we actually get around liability on that. I don't know if you have the right qualifications. God help me, I don't know. I'm kind of trusting you and I'm hoping that, corporate services and our hiring officer did a good job, but it feels moderately bizarre to leave this decision in the hands of council. Because realistically, we don't know. Yeah, I'm sorry, this is bizarre. So I come to another different question, which is really, is this a place where delegated authority would make sense? Or is it really, we're just appointing the fire chief and basically it's the person we've hired as fire chief? And we're kind of rubber stamping what we've already rubber stamped before, which is roundabout, kind of weird, but there we're doing it. I do not understand this at all in terms of why it makes any sense at all, I guess is what I'm saying.
So through the deputy mayor back to Councillor St. Pierre. Probably a good explanation is why when it first came out in 2016, that it took 8 years to actually come into full force. There were so many pieces to this Fire Safety Act that were confusing to fire departments, confusing to chiefs, confusing to municipalities of what the implications of these changes were. And when it first came out, there was this promises of all these different things and it's changed its iterations in so many different ways to what it is last year. There's still a lot of confusion as to what the actual requirements of our fire inspectors and our investigators are actually going to be yet. Let alone that we're now designating our local authorities to give the powers back to the fire chief and delegates to actually carry out this work. So I appreciate it's a little confusing. It is back to what we were talking about before. Same business that we were doing before. It's just for the reasons of the Office of the Fire Commission, which I can't speak to, they've designated the municipalities as the people to give that authority.
Okay, so it makes as much sense to use it as to me, and that's good to know. Thank you.
Councillor Pearson.
Yes, through our chair. Any risks to us financially, like training, getting people up? Like, is it a significant amount of, I mean, your assistant fire chief, captains, lieutenants, or fire prevention staff? Do you anticipate any big costs?
So through the deputy back to Councillor Pearson, no, there's not necessarily, because we've already engaged through different contractors and educational opportunities. A lot of our inspectors and our officers on our fire trucks and stuff already have the minimum training, if not more, that will satisfy that. And then it's our responsibility to actually show that they have the minimum requirements to the Office of the Fire Commissioner. So right now, I don't foresee any additional costs. We're still doing the same training and the same education that we were in the past.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think we're ready for a motion. Councillor Pearson.
I'll move that council designate Sioux Fire Chiefs, Rescue Fire Chief and delegates, Deputy Fire Chief, Assistant Fire Chief, Captains, Lieutenants, or Fire Prevention Staff as fire inspectors and fire investigators as defined within the British Columbia Fire Safety Act for the purposes of performing fire inspections and or fire investigations within the District of Sooke.
Mic on. And would you wish to motivate or no more at this point?
Very clear.
Okay, so we'll have a vote. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Okay. Item 9.4 is the first of two sponsorship considerations. The first is with Sooke Harborside Lions Mallard race, or the yellow duck. Yeah, okay. You would like to move the motion that council approve a $20 sponsorship for the Sooke Harborside Lions Mallard race with the funds to be allocated from the sponsorship account. We'll vote on that. Unless anyone has comments? No? Okay. All in favor? Yes. Hello. Okay, sorry, carried unanimously. Okay. I'm hanging in. 9.5, the Sooke Paddle Battle 2025 sponsorship consideration. Now, can we have a bit of a staff report on this? Thank you.
Thank you through Deputy Mayor, to council, the one bit for the staff report that I will add is registration. Hopefully I've captured it in the report. Their initial targets were 150. They well exceeded 200 registrations already, which is tremendous as a new event and new first year to the community. The other note is that the platinum sponsorship is no longer available. So the remaining sponsorships are silver or gold. So seeking council direction, should you wish to provide sponsorship for the Sooke Paddle Battle 2025, which is an inaugural pickleball tournament taking place at the Sea Park Recreation Center.
Okay, so the silver are 150 and gold are 250. And I'll ask through me to you, to somebody, how much is left in that sponsorship fund?
There's $2,500 in that account. Earlier today, coincidentally, the EMCS basketball, I believe you allocated $1,000 from that account to them. So that would leave us with $1,500 less the $20 you just allocated on the last agenda item. So there are sufficient funds remaining in the sponsorship account.
All right. So any questions, Councillor
No,
Pierce?
I will make a motion that we sponsor gold $250 to the Sooke Paddle Battle of 2025.
Pierre has seconded.
Pickleball, one of the most growing sports there is in Canada. Pickleball people have, been in here multiple times, asked for multiple amounts of money, and have done a tremendous job with developing membership, the pickleball court and everything. So.
Councillor St. Pierre. Okay, so we've got a motion on the floor. We have a mover and seconder. Any further comments? I'll just make a note here that we're down to $1,480 in this account. It's the end of March. It strikes me that we very generously gave the Wounded Warrior Run $1,000. And my only concern with the silver or gold differentiation is that $100 and how we might want to effectively manage this fund over the course of a year. And through myself again to staff, I understand we will be receiving a staff report in future with some recommendations.
Yes, I can just touch on that for today, but yeah, the community investment program is planning to be presented to council probably at the April committee of the whole meeting, just to be determined on the exact timing, depending what's on the agenda. Where to your point, this and line items, service agreements, community grants will all, events. Sponsorship has grown quite a bit over the years. So the idea of this is to provide council with some options on a wholesome revamp of this program, provide clarity to all involved, and make sure everyone's working from the same set of rules. And so that's anticipated to come next month.
All right, so let's have a vote. All in favor of, yes, all in favor. And I think we've got a carried.
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay, carried unanimously. Okay, we're moving into section 10 bylaws. This is 10.1 zoning zoning amendment bylaw 6727 West Coast Road.
Thank you. Yeah, so this application is in regard to a proposed zoning amendment at 6727 West Coast Road. There's a presentation. Sorry, 1 second. Yeah, so the subject property is 2,500 square meters and contains a single family dwelling. The site is accessed by Highway 14, which abuts the property immediately to the west. The property is zoned large lot residential R1 and has an OCP designation of town center. Surrounding land uses include general commercial C2 to the north, south, and west, and large lot residential R1 to the east and south. This application is proposing to rezone the subject property from large lot residential to general commercial to accommodate a commercial development according to the applicant's rationale, specifically for the purpose of a restaurant and bowling alley. The proposed C2 zone is consistent with the existing town center land use designation. Therefore, an official community plan amendment is not required. However, a public hearing will be required due to the commercial nature of the proposal. A conceptual plan has been submitted with the application and is attached to the report, but is not being considered as part of the rezoning. A review of specific development plans would take place at time of development permit following rezoning. Also, in this case, a development permit would be considered by council due to the town center location. This table here provides a comparison of the existing R1 and proposed C2 zones. Notably, the R1 zone is a residential zone that supports low density, small scale multi-unit housing, whereas the C2 zone permits a variety of commercial uses such as retail, restaurant, indoor amusement facility, as well as mixed residential and commercial development. The C2 zone also allows for greater lot coverage and reduced setbacks unless located adjacent to a residential zoned property. In this case, the rear and south interior setback would be 4.5 as opposed to 0 meters. The proposed zoning amendment is consistent with the existing town center land use designation, as this area is intended to accommodate a variety of commercial uses and higher density residential developments within what is envisioned to be the commercial hub of the community. Rezoning is also consistent with multiple OCP objectives related to supporting additional commercial use and economic development in the town center. A traffic impact assessment and left turn analysis were submitted as part of the application prepared by Watt Consulting Group. Development was determined to have a negligible impact on existing traffic conditions. However, a left turn lane was to access the site was determined to be warranted. Therefore, in accordance with the traffic study recommendations, staff are recommending securing a left turn lane by covenant as a condition of rezoning, subject to Ministry of Transportation and Transit approval. A sewer serviceability report was also completed to review impacts of the proposal on the public sanitary system. Staff are satisfied with the results of the report and confirm the proposal can be accommodated. The application was referred to external agencies and internal departments for comments. These have been included with the staff report. There are no outstanding concerns related to the rezoning application specifically. Comments regarding road dedication and the left turn lane have been included in the recommended zoning conditions as noted. Staff have also provided the applicant with advisory comments related to future development permit and building permit requirements and considerations. Subject to first and second reading, staff will schedule a public hearing to give the public an opportunity to provide input on the proposal for council's consideration. Notification of the public hearing would occur by newspaper and mail in accordance with the Local Government Act and the District Development Procedures Bylaw. While not required under the district's procedures bylaw, the applicant conducted a public information meeting and survey related to the proposal. The feedback received was noted to be generally positive, and a summary of the event and survey responses have been included with the report as well. And with that, staff are recommending to council to give first and second reading to the amendment bylaw to rezone the subject property from R1 to C2, to direct staff to schedule a public hearing, and that prior to adoption of the amendment bylaw, the owner register a section 219 covenant to secure road dedication and registration of a section of a 2.5 meter statutory right-of-way, a westbound left turn lane on Highway 14, and a contribution of $3,000 per residential unit to the district's housing reserve fund in the instance there is a residential component to the development. This concludes my presentation. I'm available for questions if council has any.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Riley. Questions? I saw Beddoes and then St. Pierre.
I don't know where to begin on this one. I've seen a lot of proposals come across here. I've never seen one so lacking as this one. You know, we just went through a process with Murray Road and having the developer and all that jump through a whole bunch of hoops. And here we are proposing a bowling alley, and how many people are going to be using it? Where's the parking plan? What my first blush at looking at this site, I mean, I'd love to have a bowling alley. I'd love to have a restaurant in town. But the applicant says that he doesn't really speak to the parking part of it other than it's in downtown and everybody can walk and ride to it. And I look at the area, I know the area very well. There's no on-street parking. There's our Ed McGregor lot, which is designed and used by people using the park. All the other parking in the area is private, used for the development or the use for those businesses. I don't see it. Now, you allude to the fact that it might come in the development permit, but I cannot support this the way it is. I mean, is this a 2-story building, a 3-story building? Where's the restaurant? Where's the parking? There's just nothing here. So I'm really disillusioned to even see it at this state. Especially when I've run into some problems in the past with when we talk about a development permit and we talk about zoning. And it seems it varies from one, and this is the staff to our CAO, to our chair. Some of them applications, we run them through the hoops and make sure that all these ducks are in a row and all these questions are answered beforehand. And then another one comes up and saying, well, we'll do it at a public hearing when they put the development permit in. I'd find it very difficult. The development permit would come in with a building of this size, with, you know, what I know of bowling alleys, and I've been to many of them over the years, and a restaurant. And you would need a great deal of parking. You know, for the people that live within a kilometer of this site is a very, very, very small portion of Sooke. They talked about people getting here by bus. Well, there is no bus service in Sooke. How do people get from Sun River to this location? There isn't any. So I'm aghast that this is at this far, or are we taking applications like that and saying, okay, you get the C2 and then the bowling alley goes out the window. So I'm not happy with what I see here. And maybe I'm missing something. Is there a parking plan? How many people would be expect to be using a bowling alley? How many lanes is it? I don't know. Is that in here? Did I miss it?
Mr. Riley? I think there were some questions there.
Okay. Yeah, through the mayor. So yeah, these details would be at the level of development permits, right? So the development permit would come back to council with all that information. We don't approve a parking plan in most cases, in 99% of the cases, as part of a rezoning application. But yes, again, all these details would be considered by council as it's in the town center at time of development permit, subject to rezoning. And regarding the, I guess, equity in application processes, we did take these individuals through the same process we take all applications. And again, through the referral comments, we did identify that the sewer capacities were adequate, and that also there was a warranted left turn lane, which we're including as a condition of development. But that is basically it, and we're not locking down the use necessarily here. So we're keeping the uses of the C2 zone open. A bowling alley is only conceptual. It could be a mixed residential development potentially in the future. That's why there's another condition there as well for an affordable housing contribution if there is a residential component in the future for this site. But we will have other opportunities to dissect proposal information, and council will as well, as they would be approving a development permit subject to rezoning at a later stage.
That didn't answer my question, actually. Can I carry on?
Yes, and then we'll move to
Well,
Councillor St. Pierre and McMahon.
What I'm concerned about is that I've seen other applications come for a zoning change. And a lot of these questions were asked up front and explained up front. And then this one, we just say, well, yeah. I mean, do you not have an input saying that if you're going to put a bowling alley on a lot this small, and it's small for a bowling alley, or do you just at this point in time don't care, and other than it's C2, and C2 is okay in this area?
Yeah, through the mayor. So the focus here is certainly on the use of the land and the C2 zone. So again, the bowling alley is just a conceptual detail at this stage. More detail would be provided on those specific uses at time of development permit.
Okay, I'm going to move to some other questions now. Councillor St. Pierre, McMath, and Pearson in that order, please.
Thank you. So the first thing that I'd like to know is there any chance as this hopefully progresses that we can encourage multi-story? Because one thing that's been happening in the town center is that we've had a lot of single story. So I'm just going to throw that out. I recognize that this application has actually changed zoning from large lot residential to commercial, which makes a lot of sense for the town center. And that's actually the focus here. I'm curious. I'm very curious, actually, also to know how they'll manage parking, but I'm assuming the project simply will not progress if that can't be managed somehow. And that's the way things go. Meanwhile, the C2 zoning actually makes sense for the town center. So I guess I don't really have a question. Actually, the biggest question is actually, are we able to encourage multi-story and with residential, or is that just a gleam in the eye? I didn't get the sense it was part of the proposal. Do we know if the applicant has any interest in building residential on top?
Yeah, through the mayor, currently the concept and the proposal we're anticipating, subject to rezoning, would be a single story commercial building, a bowling alley with a restaurant, but that's to be determined. There's nothing that would be requiring development of a multi-story building or for there to be a residential component, but the zoning would support that.
Okay, well, certainly it'd be a lot of fun to live on top of bowling alley, I'm pretty sure.
Okay, Councillor McMath.
I think this is great. We're dying for more commercial. Sooke's average of residential property taxes is significantly higher versus the commercial. So this is kind of what we're looking for. I'm a little bit confused by Councillor Beto's questions because I'm trying to think of an example of when we've had a development completely locked in prior to us going ahead with a rezoning. And I would give another example of a property out towards Beecher Bay, Grouse Nest area that we did a spot rezoning immediately with no picture at all as to what that was actually going to look like. So I'm fully in support of this motion.
Okay, Councillor Pearson.
Yeah, we're talking about zoning and it's in our town core. It's currently residential, which is kind of a waste of commercial property. It's C2 to the west, C2 to the east. I always get this question on usage because I'm looking at C2 usage. In the past, we've had very specific uses covered within the zoning, C1, C2, or C3. Is bowling alley acceptable in C2? Because I don't see the word bowling alley and I'm always worried when I don't see a specific use in a category. Brew pub was not in there 6 or 7 years ago. Secondhand stores were so C2. I'd like to know if bowling alley would be a permitted use.
Yeah, through the mayor, yes, it is permitted through indoor amusement facility.
Perfect. I will be voting for this rezoning.
Okay, so I think the good news is that our vote tonight will take us to a public hearing, at which time the applicant will be here, ideally with a larger information package with perhaps some design drawings, and he'll be able to answer our questions regarding parking. And at that evening, we can determine accordingly. So let's have a motion, please. Councillor McMath, and we'll have a seconder. Oh, yeah, we read it first. Yeah.
That council give first and second reading to zoning amendment bylaw number 920 600-109 2025 to amend the zoning of the subject property legally described as lot 13 section 3 Sooke District Plan VIP 1169 6727 West Coast Road from large lot residential R1 to general commercial C2. And that council directs staff to schedule a public hearing related to the proposed amendment bylaw. And that prior to adoption of the amendment bylaw, the owner registers a section 219 covenant attachment 4 in priority of all other charges on title to secure the following prior to issuance of a building permit. Road dedication to meet the Highway 14 cross-section standards of bylaw number 404, including a 2.5 meter statutory right of way wide. Installation of a westbound left turn lane on Highway 14, subject to the approval of the Ministry of Transportation and Transit, and an affordable housing contribution of $3,000 per residential unit to the district's Housing Reserve Fund.
Okay, seconder, please. Counselor. I don't know, you both went up St. Pierre this time. Okay. Okay, we'll first go to the mover and seconder to and comments now, and Counselor Beddoes.
Yeah, I just want to be clear. I have no problem with that portion of town going to C2. What I do have a problem with is staff treating these applications differently at each time. At least that's how I see it. So I don't like the way it's done. And I'd be interested to see when it comes forward that it's even doable. And I hope it is. I mean, it sounds like fun to have a bowling alley. I don't know where everybody's going to park, but I guess that's their problem to tell us. So I just wanted to register the objection, and that it's the C2 is not the problem for me. It's our process.
I'll just note, thinking back to the Murray Road rezoning, there was talk at the time of ideally in future, we would see development permits and rezoning coming together on an evening. We're not at that time yet. In that case, yeah, and caused a bit of controversy around that. However, here we are. So let's calling the question. That's a 4 and one. Okay. We're now moving to 10.2, 2025 to 2029, 5-year financial plan bylaw. So we'll over to our Director of Finance, I suspect.
Thank you. Through the chair to council and members of the public, tonight we have the 2025 to 2029 5-year financial plan bylaw 922-2025 in front of council for first, second, and third readings. We also seek council's approval to host a community budget open house scheduled on Wednesday, April the 2nd at Municipal Hall to hear public voice on the budget. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Questions of our Director of Finance? We, of course, have discussed this at great length just 2 weeks ago, or March 10th, I think it was, which is 2 weeks. So we have a motion on the floor. No, we don't have a motion. We're Councillor Pearson.
Through the chair to our Director of Finance and hopefully our CAO, has there been, other than the recent communication from ECOM, has there been any movement towards any relaxation of that bill?
Through Deputy Mayor to Councillor Pearson, to date, no. We have received an extension from ECOM that council will consider later tonight to give us a bit more time for us and the other 10 or 9 municipalities, more time to review the legal contract. And as well, I believe there's another letter about to be distributed back to the province, again, requesting an update and further information on potentially even just a year of additional time to sort out all of this direction. But to date, no formal commitment yet from the province.
Okay. And I have one follow-up question through the chair, if it's may. If there was relaxation on that, how many % would it relax our current year budget plan, our 2026 year budget?
I'll double check with Miss Lou. 2.7%, I believe the number is.
Yeah.
For this year's, included in this year's budget, I believe it's 2.5, 2.7%. Of the overall increase.
3%. I was thinking it was going to be 3%. Okay.
Yes. And then the idea being if this is something we have Because until the tax rate bylaw gets adopted on May 15th or before May 15th, these numbers in theory could always change if necessary. If for some reason the district has collected this money, presumably this will go into the RCMP reserve to be determined what would happen if for some reason this fee gets waived and we have collected these funds. We can cross that bridge when we get to it, I guess.
And one last question. So, following the public hearings or the public information, I guess the public information, not a public hearing, it's a public information session. If we receive, vociferous feedback or opposition to the current proposed budget, what opportunities do we have to change the current year budget?
I'll maybe start and see if Ms. Lou wants to add in. Basically through Deputy Mayor to Council Pearson, opportunities would be at any point you can direct staff to, when it comes back for third reading and adoption, or sorry, I guess it's 3 readings today. So when it comes back for adoption, you can direct staff that you're not ready to adopt this bylaw and request changes to the bylaw based on XYZ. And then just most likely, depending on the timing of this, we'll probably have to call some special meetings just to ensure we hit the legislative deadline of the May 15th. But absolutely, until this bylaw is adopted, and then actually technically until the tax rate bylaw is adopted, at any time, council can direct staff to make an adjustments. So.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor St. Pierre.
This is just an answer to Councilor Pearson's question. I don't remember names very well, but I remember figures. And I just found it 2.35%.
Okay, Councillor McMath.
Guess what I'm going to ask about? I just wanted to have a couple follow-up questions on the fire staffing and engine 2. And so I was wondering if you could walk us through again, just so everyone's on the same page, about the difference that it makes. So currently we have 2 members on per shift, correct? And so can you just walk the group through the difference that makes? So if there's a structure fire, how you're limited for entry and those pieces. Because I don't think everyone fully understands 2 members versus 4 members on a truck and how that prevents you or allows you to enter a building.
Okay, through the Deputy Mayor to Councillor McMath. So the importance for us when we look towards our goal of that 4-person truck and the roles that those people all factor into a structure fire. So as we mentioned before, WorkSafe BC limits our entry into a structure fire for any internal operations when we have less than 4 people. So with a 2-person truck, we're really limited to only external operations. So we can engage in fire activities outside of the building, but we can't go in for any rescue or anything like that. When we get into 3 people, we're still limited, but our 4th person gives us the ability under that WorkSafe rule to actually engage within a first 10-minute window of our initial response to go inside and actually affect what would be a rescue or a quick attack on a fire. So when we get up to that 4-person staffing, it's a critical change in terms of how we tactically address a fire in that first initial response. And as you remember, there's quite a bit of lag time in between what our actual career staff are responding to an incident like a fire, and then backup resources coming from whether it's from our paid on call reserve, like our actual staff, or our municipalities, which we have our mutual and auto aid agreements with. So the critical importance for us is to get to that staffing number so that we can actually have a lot more opportunities and a lot more chances to affect rescue within a house that's on fire.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then and please don't take it personally. Part of my job is like when I'm at the grocery store and someone asks me, why did you greenlight the purchase of XYZ? I just need to be able to explain it to them to justify that cost. So could we, if we delay engine 2's purchase, I know we already have some commitments to it, does that not free us up financially to get the 2 members that we're currently trying to onboard? And if we did that, like what are the financial consequences of that versus the potential for that hiring?
So like when we discuss, I understand the the piece in terms of what the savings looks like optically in terms of the fire engine. A lot of our commitments are already there, so there are some drawbacks to looking at what canceling that order would be. I'll let Chris talk to the actual order of the fire truck, but in terms of our staffing piece, there's a capital project in terms of how we fund our apparatus, and then there's the operating costs of our staffing. And I don't know if the offsetting of saving on a fire truck is going to help us with the staffing of our people through operating. Is that what you're kind of asking? Yeah, and then the implications of engine 2, I'll let Chris talk to, because there's a lot of factors to consider if we were going to go down that road.
Yeah.
So engine 2, we've already put a deposit down on it back in April. And we also locked into a rate at that time of what our dollar was worth. Currently, our dollar is 10 points worse than it was at that time. So if we canceled it and then did an order immediately tomorrow, it would be 10 points higher just based off our dollar. So that initially, that'll give us an extra cost of another $100,000 to $200,000 on top of what we paid. Also, if you consider that the average fire truck right now costs approximately $1.5 to $1.8 million, and this truck's locked in at $1 million, it's already a huge savings over what we would pay if we were to order a new truck.
Right.
The other concern that we have is we go back to talking about our trucks being newer than 20 years old to meet meet the FUS requirements. So right now we have one truck that's 2003, which is engine 2, that's what we're replacing in 2026. We also have engine 12, which is a 2006. So in 2026, it will be 20 years old as well. And our ladder truck is a 2006, which will also be 20 years old. So as of 2026, if we don't replace that truck, we'll have 3 trucks that are over 20 or at 20 years old or older, which makes the fire underwriters, they'll prolong 1 truck at a time, but they're not likely to prolong 3 out of 4 of our frontline trucks.
Right.
So, and if we drop it now and then reorder today, it's 2 to 4 years to replace it. So now that puts us 2 to 4 years down the road farther, which compounds our problem because it gets into the time frame that we would be replacing engine 12 or the ladder truck as well.
Gotcha. And then what happens if we did that? Not saying that we are, but if we did that, what's the financial impact of having those outdated apparatus?
So it's longer downtime. So engine 2 right now currently, all the piping inside engine 2 is made of cast metal or like cast iron metal. So because it's 20 years old, we're starting to get pinholes into the plumbing. All the new trucks use stainless steel or aluminum for their plumbing. So we're having problems with the plumbing leaking because it's rotting through. We're also having downtime because of it's got starting issues. It doesn't always start every time we go to fire it up. So it's becoming reliability issues with that truck. And if we push that truck 2 years down the road, even now we're getting to the point where now we have engine 12, which is our other truck. We'll be having some of those problems because that truck actually has really high mileage because it was bought used back in 2010. So we bought it used from another fire department. It had high mileage when we bought it, and it was a stopgap because we couldn't afford to buy a new truck at that time. So these trucks have all been delayed down the road already. And so us delaying them longer just is compounding the problem. We've been trying to space them out because originally when they were replaced in the early 2000s, they were all replaced within a 3 to 4 year span.
Right.
And now we're getting that problem again. So we've been trying to space them out to not have every single year a new truck coming up because they are expensive. Like for instance, we bought one in 2021. It cost us for a frontline engine was around $800,000. That equivalent engine today is 1.8 million. So the prices have gone up significantly on fire trucks with the rates with inflation and with our dollar and now the threat of tariffs. I don't think it's gonna get any better if we prolong them down the road. It's sort of just kicking the can down and making it worse later. It's the same as we're doing with, or we had happen with our road expansion.
I was just gonna
And
say.
with some of the
smaller
other
house.
stuff that we've pushed down the road and
Yeah.
now we're having to pay more than we would have if we'd done them when they were due.
And is there an insurance impact as well?
So yeah, fire underwriters, originally, some of you will remember that fire underwriters used to say they want the frontline truck to be 15 years, second line 15 to 20, and then reserve could be 20 to 25. About 4 to 5 years ago, fire underwriters acknowledged that small communities, it's really difficult to replace trucks every 15 years. So they changed the rules so that you could replace your trucks at 20 years, but then they changed it that all your trucks had to be replaced at 20 years.
Okay.
So you could get an extension to 25 for your reserve truck, but that's on a yearly basis and they don't guarantee that they will do that every year.
Okay.
So there is extra costs.
Just to add one piece with the fire underwriters, we're not a small community anymore. We're designated as a medium community. So that impacts us too in terms of the age of our fleet that we're allowed to have before it starts to have any implications on our insurance grades. And one of the things that Chris and I want to do this year is update our fire underwriters because the last update we had was about 7 years ago. And we're doing things differently. We have full-time crews on 24 hours, 24/7. We have a new signed, or going to have a new signed agreement with our municipalities that are adjacent to us. So all these pieces we want to get an update on because we want to have a little bit more of a guiding document that gives us an idea of how we're performing today and what we should be doing into the next 5 to 10 years. So we need to update that information. If we are to leave the apparatus and delay our purchase of engine 2, it doesn't now qualify for our grading requirements for fire underwriters. And then we have the next 2 of our trucks that are going to be over 20 years as well. And then that starts to impact us too, because now if we don't have an actual replacement plan in place for those trucks, then that our grade suffers as well. So it would delay our actual upgrade because I wouldn't be doing it if we were going to be going down that road of delaying purchase of our fleet.
Okay. And then now that you have the delay of the hiring, how's that impacting your targets for like a full complement?
You mean for this year?
Yeah.
So obviously the delay to June is not as ideal as we would like it to be because we'd like to get the bodies in place specifically for the summertime when we have a lot of coverage and vacancies, and that impacts our budget. There's some pieces we're just moving into collective bargaining, and there's some pieces that are restricting us in terms of our language, how we can actually cover those vacancies. So when we have our bodies over the complement of 2, it actually gives us a lot more flexibility and the ability to cover those vacancies without incurring overtime. So right now, to get that body in June is great. And, with your support and moving forward into 2026 and 2027, if we were to maintain those 2 people hires per year, then that just gives us way more flexibility in terms of our staffing requirements, but it also starts to get us towards that goal like we were talking about in terms of our service level that we can provide to the community and the actual level of service that we can do as a fire department when we're responding to some of these incidents.
Thank you so much.
You bet.
Okay, no further, let's get a motion on the floor. Okay.
I was just curious, we had a speaker earlier, Mrs. Lewis, and she had a question about the open budget hours and having multiple open houses to accommodate people that have different obligations. And so I was just wondering if we could chat a bit about that. And then I guess I could just tag this on there is there any reason for us just doing a second reading today, having the open houses and then going to third reading? Because I find one of the awkward pieces, if we go to the community, I'd rather it be like, this is what we're looking at doing. And then if someone has this great insight or this outside suggestion that could impact it, it's the open house should be to hear and have feedback as well as to download information. But if we just go straight to third reading, it's like a closed door and it's like, here's what you get. This is why. Doesn't So I'm just curious what the group thinks on that.
Corporate officer has some information.
I'm sure Ms. Mager, the CAO, can speak to some of the other pieces of this, but just in regards to bylaw readings, council can absolutely amend a bylaw between third reading and adoption. So there is an opportunity.
Yeah, Ms. Mogg, would you like to speak to this?
Thank you, absolutely. So one, we do a two-phase engagement process with our budget, and something that we've been really working on over the years with phase one engagement. It runs over the summer. It starts deliberately when people are paying their taxes, and that response is heightened. We saw response levels increased over 1,200 participants last year that run to Ms. Lewer's point in the evenings and on weekends over a 2-month span, in person, online, through multiple mediums with the specific open house. Some of it is a bit of a time crunch as far as the system, but the budget is built on the foundation of citizen engagement. So I think that's something that we should actually be really proud of. We take the data that people provide comments on is the dollars. So what is your impression on service levels where you spend the equivalent of this amount per month on this particular service? This is what you're getting for the service level. And so that's the feedback that we're directly seeking that has informed the budget to get us to this point. So I think that's one piece to be really mindful of. The second is during that, the second budget open house, we do try to span it over afternoon and evenings. Interestingly, anecdotally, over the last few years, our participation is busyness, but most busy during the daytime, evening. And then we also receive feedback online at any time, 24 hours a day. Generally speaking, over the last few years, through this phase of the budget, we tend to get 1 to 3 correspondences in. Hopefully we're always wanting to hear from the community. Hopefully we'll see more than that. But those are some of the mechanisms just to respond to that question as to how we're trying to reach all members of the community and make sure that their voices are heard throughout this entire process.
Okay, a motion is in Councillor St. Pierre.
I did. The council give first, second, and third reading to 2025 to 2029 5-year financial plan bylaw number 922/2025. And the council directs staff to conduct a community budget open house on Wednesday, April 2nd, 2025, from 2:30 PM to 7:30 PM at Municipal Hall Council Chambers.
A seconder? Okay, Councillor Beddoes has seconded. Opportunity to speak further at this point.
I think we should take this to open house as quickly as we can. I think we've done a lot of work on it already, and I think it's what we can do. The rest of the council comment further.
Beddoes?
Yeah, I'm anxious to hear back from the public. My past experiences, we don't get much, but this is a huge increase. One I'm feeling not comfortable with, but I understand, you know, we're up against it because of other forces. So let's give it over to the public and see where we go.
Further comment? Yes.
I'm sure this is going to happen already, but just to put in the notices and those pieces and the publications that go out, to put the actual dollar amount, because if you just hear the percentage, it seems like this obscene amount, but if you put in the dollar value, which is about $19 a month, then it's not so overwhelming to people that are already extremely on edge with their budgets so tight with the other pieces that are moving. So.
Councillor Pearson.
Yeah, I'm really, really struggling with it, given the world that we're living in, the financial pressures for everybody and the uncertainty that's out there. And it just feels like we're adding another piece on the pile. And it really is, it's counterintuitive to me to be supporting a budget of this nature. It really doesn't sit well. I think I've kind of racked my brain of where we can save money or where we can't, but everything has a price. There's a consequence to every decision that we make. I am going to support the motion tonight to move it to public hearing, but that's not going to be the end of it, I'm pretty sure. So, thank you.
To move it to third reading, to be clear. So I'll just close off by saying, we did vote unanimously. All 6 of us were present back on March 10th to request staff bring forward this plan at the current rates. I think what I heard that night, and I really appreciate the cautions because it's very unpredictable times, but council recognizes very much a needs not wants increase, rooted largely in community safety and asset management increases, the 911 costs, and these non-discretionary increases, QP, IAFF, and management staff contract increases, the highway maintenance contract. Staff at council's request had in fact asked for an increase below 10%, and we received back a set of options that clearly indicated to us that deep cuts in our reserve funds, particularly the policing reserve fund, would be required. And I think as we discussed on March 10th, rather than running reserves down, council took a measured long-term, long game, common sense, I dare say, approach. Sort of a good parent budget, much like last year's. And yeah, I too am very interested to hear what the open house will deliver. I haven't heard a lot of feedback to date. This is, what is the number here is $236 on the average assessed $770,000 Sooke household. So yeah, so let's vote. Okay, all in favor? That's carried unanimously. New business. I don't think we have any new business tonight. No items removed from the consent agenda for discussion tonight. Council verbal reports. Who'd like to go first? Councillor Pearson.
I attended the CRD water distribution meeting on Wednesday. And they have just released their regional water supply strategic plan update overview. And I think it would be very, very wise for any of us to go there and have a look. They've produced these little cards, which I will leave here. More than 430,000 people in the region rely on clean, drinkable water every day. The CRD is updating a long-range strategic plan to ensure the delivery of safe, reliable, high-quality water to the region for generations to come. This plan will guide the water-related decisions for the next 30 years, and your voice is important. So don't take your drinking water for granted. Have your say. Go to getinvolved.crd.bc.ca regional water supply water hyphen supply hyphen strategic plan hyphen 50,500 megaliters of treated water on average per year, 252 million bathtubs full. Sooke Lake is currently full, and this I will leave a copy out here, and I've got my notes I think in here. It has not filled until January 3 times in modern history, 2 times in the last three years of those 3 into January, even though it feels like today, we've got an ample supply of water, but there's an indicator that climate change is affecting when that reservoir gets full. So we have to protect our water. Of particular note, the CRD Water has bought the former Kapoor lumberlands and added it to their reserve lands around the water supply. And it's been in the works for somewhere between 20 and 30 years to secure that land. And they've approved it through a alternative approval process of buying it. But again, it's not surprising. The method is questionable, but that's not for us to decide. I think that's all I have. There's several projects that are going on, transmission lines, applications. They're looking for a $40 to $50 million upgrade to the transmission lines. 40% of that is going to come from the same infrastructure grant funding that we were talking about earlier tonight. So they're hoping for that. There's a bunch of modernization in the CRD water, real-time reporting, what's the status of our plant at any given time. There was a seismic, when I was away on vacation, there was a couple of seismic activities just off the coast of Vancouver Island. And to review our dams, SOP, standard operating procedure, was put into place. The criteria is within 50 miles in a magnitude of 5. The magnitude was 4.5, so they did it as a practice run, and there was no structural discrepancies with our current dams and infrastructure. Lots going on with CRD water.
So far, so good.
That's
With
it.
the great quake coming. Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor St. Pierre.
So I attended the latest Climate Action Task Force Intermunicipal on March 14th. The most interesting thing about it, there was the regular reports on moving forward e-mobility and so on and so forth. Various other programs, but you can catch that in the newsletter. The more interesting piece was actually having all of the local government reps around the table, and we were doing a lot of input into the climate action strategy plan. And that will move forward to the next level. The interesting thing was a certain amount of unanimity amongst the group, which I'm not necessarily always used to having with electeds, around the need for communication and for a need for a culture shift in order to actually accomplish the goals. And that basically most of the goals seem to be fading out of sight in terms of actually reaching this percentage reductions or that percentage, unless we could actually really get good information communicated out and get more people into a culture shift. And as most of us knew at one point, was fond of saying, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And so there was a general understanding that if we can focus on better communication for culture shift, that's probably what we needed to do, at least to a large extent. So that was the first time I'd really seen that come into that kind of focus, and most people really saying that's what's kind of needed. And that's not the direction I think that, generally speaking, the CRD has taken with this. So interesting to see what will happen next in terms of whether or not they take this information, what they do with it.
Councillor Beddoes? Sea Park.
Yeah, no, Sea Park, we had another one of our planning sessions, and we've made a lot of headway. We're having another one next month in April. I have canceled the regular Sea Park meeting, talking to our manager there. We don't have a lot on the books. We're sort of in the budget stage as well. And we're going to concentrate the week after on our next meeting, and should bring the strat plan to a close fairly soon. A lot of good, Councillor Bateman attended on behalf of the mayor, and he was there because I was not 100% well. I had to leave. So we are making progress, and it's some interesting stats that come up. So I look forward to having a full report to council when we get her done.
You're good? Okay. So I'll close out. So planning for the visit of the seniors advocate here on Friday here in Sooke. We met with Dan Levitt at UBCM and extended that invite. And this is the first of maybe a couple of invites, because I think Councillor Pearson wants to take him out on the water. And it is a very enthusiastic, positive individual. So we're going to walk him around town, take him to Community Hall, where they're ready for him at the Sooke Food Bank, Contact Loan Cupboard, and Meals on Wheels. Then over to Air Manor, where they can discuss the stalled out plans to add a 56-bed wing, and how some advocacy there will help. And finally, over to the library, where the representatives from Sooke Region Communities Health Network will be on hand to share details of the gathering place and community health center. So this is all with the goal of getting the advocate informed and on side. And he sounded at UBCM like he's very much on side, particularly given matters like care bed and population ratios. We have, I think, 30 complex care beds, and a population our size should have double that or more. So that's one thing that's upcoming. I did attend the Sea Park strategic planning session. Fascinating to see the work going ahead. I stepped in for the mayor at the WorkLink Employment Society's job fair at EMCS last week. There was we attended the Sooke School District 62 Memorandum of Understanding meeting hosted by the trustees in Langford back on March 12th. And I stepped in for the mayor at the CRD Environmental Services Committee meeting on March 19th last week. And the focus of it was on wildlife attractants. And the CRD through View Royal had requested a report. They've created now a wildlife attractant bylaw toolkit. There's been a creation of a intermunicipal working group. I believe Sooke is sending Wildwise Society's Molly Cameron as our representative, logically because we support them with an annual $7,000. And Molly was at this meeting and spoke very eloquently about, exactly that need to stop bears from becoming habituated on garbage. You know, we heard there were 6 bears killed last year. They are euthanized is the correct language by conservation officers. 6 last year, 4 the year before. And so we'll see how this unfolds, but that's good news for the increasing recognition of coexisting with these carnivores. There was also a motion made to create a public awareness campaign regarding reducing wildlife attractants. So again, the Capital Region providing this larger picture service that we can tap into here in Sooke. And I could go on with a few other things, but I'll stop there. Councillor St. Pierre.
Apologies, I just missed something. I did attend on behalf of council, the First Nation Housing Infrastructure Council meeting around the urban rural northern funding that's coming through for basically mostly addressing 2 funding streams, which is one is off reserve and rural. And what they were very welcoming. It was a good day. But the thing that I wanted to bring back was just how little money there really is. We're looking at, large amount. They're looking at a national scale with $14 million over a number of years to do housing. And I was shocked. So really they have to leverage and be super strategic. But I just thought I was there with a number of other Métis and First Nation, and there's just not a lot of money there, I guess. Often we have an assumption that there's all kinds of money. Reality on the ground is not quite like that. But anyway, just thought I'd bring that forward.
Community Economic Development Committee appointments, Councillor Bateman, myself, I am the chair as appointed by the mayor. Councillor St. Pierre is vice chair, again as appointed by the mayor. Councillor Beddoes, Pearson are the other councillors on this committee, along with 3 public appointees, Gwen Fisher, Catherine Strongwind, and Scott Taylor. Then we also have beginning in the imminent future is the Land Use and Development Committee, and the appointments to it are Councillor St. Pierre as chair, Councillor Pearson as vice chair. Myself and Councillor Beddoes are the council appointees. Public members are Desiree Cumming, Helen Ritz, and Rob Barry. So there's an orientation meeting for these individuals, I think tomorrow. And we'll be beginning with the first Community Economic Development meeting on March 31st, which is next Monday. And Tuesday will, at 1 o'clock, and Tuesday will be land use and development at 1 o'clock. So on that note, we're looking to adjourn to close the meeting. So shall I read out the details at this point?
Just affirming the letters, I don't suspect that you are required to read it in fulsome, but just citing which letters we are going in camera
Yes.
under.
Okay, exactly that. We're moving in camera. I see Councillor McMath has moved adjournment.
That council closed the meeting to the public pursuant to the following subsection of the community charter, the time being 8:58. 91C, labor relations or other employee relations, EIKM. Is that good enough? Okay.
What's that?